Well, it's just before 2 o'clock. Welcome to Downing Street, because we've had some big breaking news today from Westminster. Angela Rayner, the Housing Secretary, the Deputy Prime Minister, of course, has resigned from government, and it's after Sir Keir Starmer's ethics advisor found she had breached the ministerial code when she failed to pay enough stamp duty on her second home. So behind us, of course, in number 10, they are trying to work out what to do next, the ramifications of it, of course, and how this government can pick itself up and try and move on after one of the most recognisable forces in that cabinet has resigned. Well, we're joined by our political editor, Beth, Rigby, who, of course, well, you had the interview with Angela Rayner, didn't you, where the story was first revealed. What do you make of the announcement today?
Well, look, Sophie, that's a big question, isn't it? Because there's, as you said, so many ramifications of it. But look, it was clear on Wednesday when Angela Rayner gave us that exclusive interview that while she acknowledged that she had made an error and she regretted the error, she was clear she had done it in good faith. She'd been given the wrong advice. It was a genuine mistake. And really, I think she had gone public and revealed lots of personal details about her family in order to try and save her political career. But equally, for all of the complexity and sympathy around her particular predicament with the trust for her disabled son and whether or not she misunderstood what that meant about another property purchase, around all of that, was the clear thing of, had she broken the ministerial code, had she conducted herself to the highest standards of public office, and the Labour government had tightened up and set standards when Keir Starmer came in, and really he ran an election campaign on clearing up sleaze, if you like, and he also had been very, very, very critical of previous Prime Ministers, such as Boris Johnson, who had tried to hang on to ministers when they had been found to breach the code. So it's really clear to me on Wednesday that if Lori Magnus, who is the ethics advisor, did an investigation and concluded that Angela Rayner had broken the ministerial code, there was not really an option for the Prime Minister, whatever he wanted to do, and that's where we have ended up today.
And as you say, despite the sympathy, and it felt like in the letter, the report from Lori Magnus, there was some empathy there as well, that she acted with integrity, but it was also quite black and white on what it found.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was quite interesting to pick up on was the handwritten letter.
Yeah, I was about to mention that. Yes. I hadn't seen these until just a moment ago, actually, because I hadn't seen them. I'd only seen them in text. But yeah, this is it. I'm doing a brandish. That's what John Craig does. But hang on, am I in shot there? I don't know if I am.
There we go. Here it is.
Here it is. Am I in shot there? Yeah. You see that? I've never seen this. I've never seen this before, which is yes, look, there you go. So it's a handwritten letter from the Prime Minister, and I think, I'm kind of trying to guess what he might be thinking, but the fact that he hand wrote it and the things he said of Angela in it, I think reflects the deep regret inside number 10 that she has had to resign, and actually someone I was messaging said that everyone in there is very saddened at what's happened today, because the Prime Minister clearly in this letter had wanted to hold on to her, but equally understood that if she has broken the ministerial code, she cannot stay on. And what was interesting, Sophie, is when you read Angela Rayner's letter, she's had the report from the ethics advisor, Lori Magnus, and she's just decided to resign. She has seen it. He has said quite clearly, it is with regret, and I understand you acted in good faith and with integrity, but you did not seek the correct legal advice. You did not uphold yourself to the highest standards in office. He also makes note that the only reason that this tax issue came to the fore was because of actual media pursuing of it, which he also said, that was not how these things should come about. And he said, you've broken the ministerial code. Yeah. And at that point, really the decision is made for the Prime Minister. And in a way, I think, actually, can I just say, Harriet Harman has just texted me, and she'll kill me for this, but she must be watching, and she says that she had a handwritten note from Tony Blair.
Oh, there we go. So
there you go. I
time.
stand corrected. Thank you, Harriet, for letting me know that.
It's like on-air fact-checking, like real-time fact-checking.
I know, Harriet Harman is literally correcting me on air. Excellent.
Well, I'm here for it.
Well, I have never seen... Anyway, that's very... She sent us a laughing emoji, actually, on that. But so really, Sophie, you know, lots of people have been asking me for days, and I'm sure of you, is she going to stay? Is she going to go? And I've always said, I don't know, because it depends on what Laurie Magnus finds. And he's found that she broke the ministerial code.
And now, going forward, there's a big headache, right, for the guys in here. As you say, Keir Starmer didn't want to lose her. If there had been wriggle room, if there had been any way that he could have kept her, my sense is that he would have tried to. But there wasn't, and she's gone. So now what happens? Reshuffle?
There's a reshuffle now, a reshuffle going on. It's going to be a big reshuffle. I'm hearing rumours about a couple of cabinet ministers that have been told that they're not staying on. We know that the Chancellor is staying in post, and Number 10 sources have made that clear, and I think that's because they do not want any sort of market nervousness about the future of Rachel Reeves. But beyond that, it's unclear who is in and who is out. He's got a number of jobs to fill, and the rumour mill is going wild about who that will be. There's also another issue for Keir Starmer, which is Angela Rayner, and we broke this on air because I literally got the information as we were breaking the story. She was leaving government. She's also resigned as the deputy leader of the Labour Party. That is an elected position, and so he now has to run a leadership contest for the deputy leader. And of course, I don't need to tell you that might become really a battle for the heart of the Labour Party, and will it be a left-wing candidate that gets that position? There's some talk about MPs quite wanting Dawn Butler to be the interim leader. I'm picking a bit of noise up about that. So we're going to have a busy afternoon here, because there's going to be a big reshuffle. Now, at the beginning of term, there was an expectation there would be a junior ministerial reshuffle. Keir Starmer does not like changing cabinet ministers, and the reason he doesn't is that if you look at the previous government with many a chancellor, many a housing secretary, he actually wants continuity. He's got no option. So who's the deputy prime minister? Housing minister. He's got those two decisions to take just to fill Angela Rayner's boots, and then, you know, will he make other decisions? You know, will he move? You know, who will he make deputy prime minister? Will it be Pat McFadden, for example, who's the Minister of Cabinet Office, and some say, you know, has been seen as the deputy prime minister anyway in terms of being Keir's number 2, Keir Starmer's? I have no idea. I'm just, that's some of the chatter around Westminster. So we've got a reshuffle now. We've got a leadership election, and then we've got the fallout of Angela Rayner, and the fact that in the end, despite the circumstances around the decision she made, it's pretty black and white that she broke the ministerial code. And you can already see now that political opponents are really going in on the attack. Emily Badenoch, the Conservative leader, saying that the Prime Minister should have sacked her earlier, and that he's weak, and, you know, and there will be charges of one rule for them, another rule for you, and sleaze now levelled at the government. And I think within there, as I said, I think there's a lot of sadness today, because I think you read the Prime Minister's letter, you read Angela Rayner's letter, you actually read the Standards Advisor's letter, and it's regret.
It's so interesting. Beth, thank you very much indeed. Beth Rigby there, the person who really started this avalanche earlier this week with that interview with Angela Rayner. So much to digest. One of the most prominent, most forceful members of the Cabinet is out. Angela Rayner, she's resigned, and this is a government who's left the pieces in terms of a reshuffle, of course. But also, I do wonder, even though there was that, I guess, friendship even between Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner, it's a woman who's going to be a force on the backbenchers as well. Well, let's read out, shall we, a bit of the letter to the Prime Minister from his Standards Advisor, Sir Laurie Magnus, because really, as me and Beth were saying, it didn't leave much room for any wriggle room at all. He said, "I believe Miss Rayner has acted with integrity and with a dedicated and exemplary commitment to public service. I consider, however, that her unfortunate failure to settle her SDLT liability at the correct level, coupled with the fact that this was established only following intensive public scrutiny, leads me to advise you that in relation to this matter, she cannot be considered to have met the highest possible standards of proper conduct as envisaged by the Code. Accordingly, it's with deep regret that I must advise you that in these circumstances, I consider the code to have been breached. So there you go. Even though he starts off saying how important it is to say she acted with integrity, he believes the code was breached. In the letter to the Prime Minister, Angela Rayner did say it's worth saying that she decided to resign. So she wrote to the Prime Minister then, saying, I've long believed that people who serve the British public and government must always observe the highest standards. And while the independent advisor has concluded that I acted in good faith and with honesty and integrity throughout, I accept that I did not meet the highest standards in relation to my recent property purchase. I deeply regret my decision to not seek additional specialist tax advice, given both my position as Housing Secretary and my complex family arrangements. She then says, I take full responsibility for this error. I would like to take this opportunity to repeat that it was never my intention to do anything other than pay the right amount. I must also consider the significant toll the ongoing pressure of the media is taking on my family. While I rightly expect proper scrutiny on me and my life, my family did not choose to have their private lives interrogated and exposed so publicly. Angela Rayner's response there. Beth, you've got something for us.
Yeah, I've got some breaking news. As I understand it, Lucy Powell, the leader of the House, has lost her position. So as I understand it, Lucy Powell is going to be leaving Cabinet. She has lost her post. I haven't had confirmation, but as I understand it, Lucy Powell is gone. It's interesting because Lucy Powell, of course, is one of the Greater Manchester MPs, along with Angela Rayner. There's another Northern woman in the Cabinet at the moment. That is Lisa Nandy, of course, the MP for Wigan. But Lucy Powell, who is the leader of the House, she was very close to Ed Miliband. I think she ran his campaign, actually, back in 2015. She's a very popular party member, and she's been leader of the House. I understand she is out of a job and out of Cabinet.
And I guess what this indicates is that we are going to see a wider reshuffle.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, look, it's been quite clear to me when Angela Rayner announced she was leaving government that this reshuffle would, of course, go to cabinet level, not least because he has to replace those jobs. But the fact that Lucy Powell has left government suggests that, yes, it is wider than that, that actually this isn't going to be one of those reshuffles where you drop a couple of people into the roles that are being vacated through the fact that Angela Rayner's had to resign. But this is now a wider, bigger reshuffle.
And I guess it's an opportunity for a reset, right? I'm sure Number 10 would admit themselves that the polling has not been where they want to. That's an understatement. And perhaps even being forced into these changes, it could be seen as, I guess, an opportunity in some ways. Yes.
Well, I think that's I think that's right. And I think also, as a government, as Keir Starmer, if you're sitting in there and you're like, well, I've just lost my Deputy Prime Minister, she has been a massive force within this government, that you then say, let's use this moment as a wider reset, and also to try and reset the narrative around it. So instead of it being just a story about Angela Rayner forced to resign because of her tax decisions, it becomes a story about Keir Starmer shaking up the top team. And I think you know and I know how news works and the flow of news, that by the end of the day it might be that there's quite a different cabinet. It's still early days. There's another person that I've heard has lost their job, but I'm not sure if that's correct.
Right,
so
I'm going to let you go and do a bit of digging on that. Beth Rigby there saying that she's been hearing that Lucy Powell has lost her job there. So it started, effectively, is what that means. I just want to bring you the handwritten letter that was given to Angela Rayner by Sir Keir Starmer. Unusual, not just exclusively to him. We've had the correction, of course, from Harriet Harman, but this is unusual. In the handwritten letter, he said, Dear Angela, thank you for informing me of your decision to resign from the government. I'm very sad that your time as Deputy Prime Minister, Secretary of State and Deputy Leader of the Labour Party has ended this way. As you know, we acted in accordance with the strengthened system relating to ministerial conduct that we put in place on coming into government. You were right to refer yourself to the independent advisor on ministerial standards and right to act on his conclusion. Although I believe you've reached the right decision, it's a decision which I know is very painful for you. You've given your all to making the Labour Party a success, and you've been essential parts of our plan to make Britain fairer for working families. Your work at MHCLG to help build the homes that Britain needs has been hugely important, and your work to create more fairness in the workplace through the Employment Rights Bill represents a very significant achievement that will change the lives of millions of people. On a personal note, I'm very sad to be losing you from the government. You've been a trusted colleague and a true friend for many years.
Is it Scottish?
I have nothing but admiration for you and huge respect for your achievement in politics. I know that many people of all political persuasions admire that someone as talented as you is a living embodiment of social mobility. Even though you won't be part of the government, you'll remain a major figure in our party. I know you will continue to fight for the causes you care so passionately about. And then he signs off my very best wishes and with real sadness, Keir. And you can see that emotion, I think that's the right word, in that letter. Well, we said that we'd give Beth a few moments just to read out that statement. We've given her a few moments. I've heard that there's another cabinet minister that's leaving. That's Ian Murray. I understand that Ian Murray, the Scottish secretary, is also leaving government. So again, 2 additional positions from those of Angela Rayner. So that's the leader of the House, the Scottish secretary. I understand Ian Murray has also left government. And this is what happens in reshuffles. The Prime Minister goes to tell people that have lost their jobs. They get to know that in private. It begins to leak out because MPs will be talking about it, and it's not a nice thing. And then what will happen later in the day is we will then see their replacements walk up Downing Street. So as we understand it right now, Lucy Powell, the leader of the House, has left government. Ian Murray, the Scottish secretary, has left government. Of course, Angela Rayner, the housing minister and deputy prime minister, left government. So this is now shaping up, Sophie, as you said, to be quite a significant reshuffle. The only one we know that is safe is Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor. Beth, thank you very much. I'm sure we'll be going back to Beth very shortly indeed. So to recap, we know 2 people now are going to be leading the cabinet alongside Angela Rayner. It's an extensive reshuffle. Too early to tell what the shape of this new cabinet will be. We'll only get that really when we start to know the names that he's filling the posts with. And then I think we'll get a real flavour of the resets and the direction that Keir Starmer hopes to go with. Well, it's a very, very busy political news day, I think it's fair to say, because the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, brought his speech forward at his party's conference in Birmingham in order to respond to the resignation of Angela Rayner. Our political correspondent, Rob Powell, is in Birmingham for us. Rob, it is a big moment for Reform. You know, it's that big. They're riding high on the polls. They're very, very happy with the way the membership numbers are going. How was Nigel Farage's speech?
Yeah, brought forward by 3 hours, Sophie. Reform clearly trying to seize the moment. They know that lots of eyeballs will be on news channels and they want to basically inject their leader into the immediate reaction and the fallout from Angela Rayner resigning. So we got about 15, 20 minutes notice that the speech was being brought forward and everyone piled into the auditorium here. And look, really, this is an open goal for Reform. Their whole shtick, their kind of message really, is that the main parties, they're all the same. You need to get rid of them and sweep them away. So really, they're pointing at this Angela Rayner row and saying, look, it's more evidence. This is, you know, the politician that more than any other almost really sort of traded off the persona of being, I'm like you, I'm not like them. And she's been caught out not paying enough tax. So it's a gift to Reform, quite frankly. And we heard Nigel Farage putting across that message when he spoke a short time ago. This is a flavour of what he said. Have a listen.
You simply can't get away, can you, from being the Housing Secretary and avoiding £40,000 of council tax. And it screams to entitlement. It screams to a government that, despite all the promises that this would be a new, different kind of politics, is as bad, if not worse, than the one that went before.
Now, as we've grown used to, there was sparklers, there was pyro during Nigel Farage's speech. We can see some pictures as well from it, and there's quite a lot of flash photography in there, just a warning if you are affected by that. The other thing that he really talked about, though, which is kind of the bigger theme of this Reform conference, which they wanted to push, really, before it was blotted out, if you like, by events back in Westminster, was trying to professionalise the party, trying to present the party not as a protest group anymore, but as a party that genuinely is on the march to power as they see it anyway. Nigel Farage talked about that. He brought on Nadine Dorries, a former Tory cabinet minister, sort of as evidence, as he saw it, of bringing people in that have got that experience. The only kind of question mark I'd put over that is that when you look at some of the policy, it's been questioned, their economic policy around tax, around spending, about whether it really adds up, whether it really works. As well, a question I put to some of the Reform MPs that were watching afterwards is, look, you accuse Labour of chaos, of falling apart, and no one can really argue with that. But this is a party that has also lost 2 MPs within about a year since the general election. Now, they maintain that that's no evidence of what the reform would be like if they got into government. But look, I think they're still a long way away from having that full offering, both in terms of people and policy, to really justify the sort of what you hear from senior figures that they are a government in waiting. And actually, I think what we have seen from Nigel Farage is very similar to what he's always done, very, very effectively sort of capitalising, seizing on the political misfortunes of the political mainstream and sort of surfing a wave of public disenchantment and able to sort of vocalise that. But what they are doing now is they are vocalising that in a far slicker way, in a far more grabby way, and they are being very, very smart about, I think, how they engage the media and seize the attention, if you like, to both put forward what they're saying, but also to ram home what is still probably the main big appeal that Reform have, which is that they are not the mainstream, they are not the Tories, they are not Labour, and they can easily point now to stuff like the Rayner row as evidence that Labour promised change, and what you're getting is the type of scandal that you got under the previous lot.
Party. Is there an issue at all, you think, with the fact that Nigel Farage is basically welcoming so many defections from the Conservative Party, when actually many Reform voters, I guess, is a toxic brand to them?
Yeah, expect that to be one of the Labour attacks going forward, this idea of Reform being a sort of home for failed Tories. I asked Nigel Farage about that a little bit earlier when he was on the way in, and he said, well, he thought Nadine Dorries with her record was anything but a failed Tory. But I think just from a political point of view, you saw this in the Runcorn by-election, that actually the Labour message they were trying to press, they were trying to seize on the political background of Sarah Polchin, the Reform candidate that eventually won there, and they were trying to go into especially the more urban, more Labour-facing parts of that constituency and paint the candidate as basically an ex-Tory, a failed Tory, and if you elect them, you will get more of the same. So there is a risk there. There is also a more kind of niche policy risk in this as well, in that Nigel Farage talks an awful lot about free speech and how he sees suppressions of free speech in the UK and attack the Online Safety Act. Look, it was Nadine Dorries that had, as Culture Secretary, a big role in the Online Safety Act, and observers noticing that he talked about that before bringing Nadine Dorries on a few minutes later. So look, yeah, there is sometimes the sort of, we get caught in the maybe the standardised thinking of what defections mean. Ooh, that's bad for the party they're coming from and good for the party they're going to. But Reform need to be careful. Their whole thing is that they're outsiders. They're not like the mainstream. They have enough of mainstream politicians, people that the public know and recognise come and join them. Well, it's harder to land that message that we're different from the people that came before if you've got a load of the people that came before sitting next to you.
Rob, thank you very much indeed. Rob Powell reporting for us there from Reform Conference. Well, the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, has reacted. This is what she had to say on X. Angela Rayner is finally gone, but it's only because of Keir Starmer's weakness that she wasn't sacked 3 days ago. Britain deserves better. She then posted this video along with the message.
Angela Rayner is finally gone. It says everything about Keir Starmer's weak leadership that he had to wait for a report before acting. The truth is simple. She dodged tax. She lied about it. Her position was untenable for days. Keir Starmer once promised honesty and integrity in politics, but when faced with this test, he hesitated. No principles, no backbone. We Conservatives forced this investigation and were vindicated. But this isn't the end. Questions remain. What did Keir Starmer know and when? Did he mislead the public? He has now lost a Deputy Prime Minister after losing a Transport Secretary, an Anti-Corruption Minister and a Homelessness Minister to scandal. His government is in crisis, and all of this is a distraction from the profound economic crisis the country is facing because of his decisions.
Well, that was Kemi Badenoch. We also heard from the Liberal Democrat leader, Ed Davey, as well.
It's clear Angela Rayner's position was no longer tenable. I just hope the government can now move on to help the millions of people in our country who are having a tough time. The cost of living is hitting so many people. Carers and our healthcare system, they need more support. So once we've got this out of the way, please can we focus on what people need, on cost of living and on health. I always said that if the ethics advisor said she'd broken the rules, she had to go and that her position would become untenable, as it appears to have done. My sympathy was with her as a parent of a disabled child. I'm a parent of a disabled child, and there are hundreds of thousands out there, and we think about what would happen when we die, when we're gone. But you still have to abide by all the rules, particularly when you're Deputy Prime Minister and a senior politician. And if she's broken the rules, as it appears she has, she had to go.
Senator David there, who has been more sympathetic, it should be said, in his response to Angela Rayner than many other of her political opponents, even now saying, though, that if she's broken the rules, then she had to go. Well, Angela Rayner's resignation today was following an exclusive interview with the former Deputy Prime Minister and our political editor, Beth Rigby. It was a very emotional interview. It was one of those kind of engrossing moments of television, but also a very emotional one, of course, for Angela Rayner. Let's have a listen to what she had to say when she was asked if her position in government was untenable.
Well, I'm hoping people I can set the record straight. And I've given those personal information that people can see what's happened and can see that I wasn't trying to dodge tax or any of the accusations that were pushed onto me, that I relied on advice from lawyers. That advice from lawyers was inaccurate. And as soon as I was made aware of that from the leading tax expert who we asked to look at this, I am now taking all of the steps that anyone in those circumstances who rely on advice and that advice is wrong, I'm taking the steps to correct that. So hopefully people can see that there isn't any intention to deceive, to avoid, to be hypocritical in the way in which I've conducted myself.
So, a really big day here in Westminster. The resignation of the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, who is one of the forces of this government. She's, of course, the working-class mum who went from being a union rep to a Labour power player. Well, our political correspondent, Rob Powell, has been looking at her political rise and fall.
Mr. Speaker, let me put this to him simply. If it was a police officer, a teacher, a doctor, we would expect the independent process to be followed and not changed after the verdict. It's one rule for them and one rule for the rest of us.
An outspoken and unconventional politician, Angela Rayner was never afraid of taking the fight to her opponents.
They're using the rules as it seems fit for them, and actually now people are seeing it's one rule for them and one rule for everybody else. It's a disgrace what they've done. They've undermined Parliament, they've undermined our democracy.
But a row over property tax found her on the receiving end of difficult questions.
But just to be clear, you've referred yourself to the Standards Commissioner, you've contacted the tax revenue and said you could be liable for more tax. Presumably you deeply regret this because of potentially the fallout for you. Do you think your position, Angela Rayner, even though you've explained it, do you think it's sustainable? Do you think you can carry on as particularly Housing Minister?
Well, I made a mistake based upon the advice that I relied upon, that I received at the time, and a leading expert has now said that advice was wrong. I think hopefully most people can see if you rely on advice given to you by lawyers and you follow that process, and then you find out that that process is wrong and that advice was wrong, I'm rectifying it at the earliest opportunity. People make mistakes, but I conducted myself in trying to do the right thing, and I hope that people can see that.
Okay. Angela Rayner's route to the top of government was an unusual one. Born in Stockport, she left school at 16 whilst pregnant and with no qualifications. After training in social care, she became a union official before then joining Labour. Speaking before she entered government, she said she initially found Parliament an alien environment.
When you got to Westminster, Did you just think there's no one like me here? Was it lonely or difficult?
I didn't understand that it was such a big network here. I'd never, you know, I've been to London a couple of times as a union rep to our headquarters for the union, but before then, I mean, when I was growing up, my world was 3 streets on the estate I grew up in. I didn't even go to Manchester. I lived in Stockport, which is a town just outside of Manchester. Manchester was a huge thing, never mind London, never mind, you know, politics and government. But the driving force that I've always had is about trying to do the right thing. My nana taught me that. She said, always do your best. Always do your best. And I've always tried to do the right thing. And when I became pregnant at 16, I wanted to prove that I could be a good mum. I wanted to, you know, love my child and do the best I can for him.
First elected to the Greater Manchester seat of Ashton-under-Lyne in 2015, Angela Rayner was appointed Shadow Education Secretary a year later. Seen as on the left of Labour, she was one of a handful of MPs who backed Jeremy Corbyn when he fought a leadership challenge after the EU referendum. She remained in his shadow cabinet throughout his time in office and through the Brexit battles, establishing a reputation for straight and colourful speaking.
He came out of the first day of talks and the Europeans got exactly what they wanted and, you know, we rolled over and let them tickle our belly.
Tipped as a leadership candidate, Angela Rayner instead ran and was elected as Labour deputy to Sir Keir Starmer after 2019's election loss. After initially handing her a string of shadow cabinet job titles, Sir Keir attempted to demote her after disappointing local election results in 2021. But she resisted, won the power struggle that followed, and was handed an even bigger job, solidifying her position as a popular and influential voice on the left of the party.
And what a contrast to a government that is taking £1,400 out of the pockets of a nurse. Over £2 billion that they're giving to taxpayers' money has been dished out to their Tory donors and mates and ministers.
But she sometimes went too far and was criticised that year for calling Conservatives scum.
You said last night, we cannot get any worse than a bunch of scum, homophobic, racist, misogynist, absolute pile of banana republic, Etonian piece of scum. Is that the kind of civility that the Starmer-Rayner Labour Party envisages?
Well, look, that was post-watershed, as we'd say, with a group of activists at an event last night.
She eventually apologised for those comments, but still didn't shy away from confrontation in the Commons.
Mr. Speaker, I know that it is great to be here with the Right Honourable Lady, the Shadow Secretary of State, for the future of work. We know the future of the job that she has in mind.
Mr. Speaker, I've heard on the grapevine there might be a vacancy for Prime Minister soon, so maybe I should have aspirations.
A very different politician to the former barrister she served under, Angela Rayner was seen as a more traditional Labour voice who could speak to the party's heartlands. After the successful election campaign, she found herself in charge of important swathes of policy, overseeing changes to planning and house building, while also taking on responsibility for workers' rights.
But my mission is not just to build houses, it's to build homes, because we cannot build at any cost. These new homes must be warm, secure, and most importantly, safe. I know firsthand the difference a decent home can make. When I was growing up, we didn't have a lot, but we had a safe and secure home. Today, not everyone does.
But questions about her property arrangements started to emerge even before the election. Inquiries by the police and the tax office into homes she owned in the northwest seemed to put her in the clear. It was the purchase of a flat on the south coast that proved her undoing, though. A politician widely thought of as a potential successor to Sir Keir Starmer, brought down by the type of scandal she had so often called out. Rob Powell, Sky News in Westminster.
Well, good afternoon from Downing Street, where the big breaking news from Westminster today is that Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, has resigned from government, all of her jobs, it should be said. And it comes after Sir Keir Starmer's ethics advisor found she breached the ministerial code when she failed to pay enough stamp duty on her second home. Sir Laurie Magnus found she did act with integrity, but should have sought more tax advice. Well, that of course means a reshuffle is underway. It's been carried out right now by the Prime Minister, and we are starting to hear some details of what is going on as well. It means that it's going on already, and it sounds like it's becoming much more wide-ranging than expected. That's not necessarily fair, is it, Beth? But it definitely is pretty wide-ranging, isn't it?
Yeah, there's lots of rumours now about different cabinet ministers that might be losing their jobs and leaving government. We know for sure that Ian Murray, the Scottish Secretary, is leaving government, as is Lucy Powell, the leader of the House, also leaving government. One of two Greater Manchester women, actually, that had sat in cabinet. She, of course, a colleague of Angela Rayner, who has also left. There's rumours about other cabinet ministers as well, which is all leaning into the expectation that this will be potentially quite a big cabinet reshuffle from a Prime Minister who we know did not necessarily want a big cabinet reset at the start of term, that he likes continuity, that he wants to be focused on delivery, that he doesn't think chopping and changing the cabinet is necessarily a good thing in terms of delivering on policy. But it seems like Angela Rayner has shunted him into two big changes, and that has become the precursor potentially for a bigger cabinet change.
It's going to be really interesting to see the people he puts in jobs, because look, this isn't all just about who's up and who's down. It's about the direction of this government, right? And I guess we can read quite a lot into the priorities from Keir Starmer, who's had a bumpy beginning to his premiership, into the decisions he makes today.
Yeah, and it might be that what you see is that areas where he thinks the government is not doing enough, it's not going further and faster, which is one of the great catchphrases that Rachel Reeves and Starmer like to use, that everything needs to go further and faster, that perhaps in those departments he decides he wants to move people around. It's unclear at the moment. I think the other thing that's interesting that's developing, though, is also around the leadership of the deputy leadership, because Angela Rayner didn't just resign from government, she resigned her elected post as deputy leader of the Labour Party, and already, you know, we're getting people on the left of the party. This is from Richard Bergen, MP. He's sending out messages here, I've got it here, saying that there needs to be a proper election for deputy leader. They don't want a leadership stitch-up. And the reason I'm sort of talking about that is because what could happen also is Keir Starmer's already got enough problems when it comes to the economy, when it comes to party management. We saw the welfare votes, that wasn't too long ago. But now the party's going to have to deal with an election where members choose the deputy leader, and will this give sort of impetus for the left of the party to really have voice in terms of wanting their candidate in, and what might Keir Starmer and some of his allies make of that all come in as Jeremy Corbyn sets up a new left party, and of course the new leader of the Green, as he said to you, was in conversation with Jeremy Corbyn. So you've got a Labour government being squeezed by reform, particularly on migration, and feeling very uncomfortable about that. You've got a movement on the left, and now we might have to have a leadership election, and you can see that people are already positioning and jostling to make sure that's an open process. So there's a lot going on, and it's also going on for a Prime Minister who came back saying it was a reset, we're getting on with delivery, and a week has not passed, and he's let go of his Deputy Prime Minister, which I think you can see from that handwritten letter he did not want to have to do, but there was no option, because Laurie Magnus, his ethics advisor, had made it clear that Angela Rayner, whether she meant to or not, had not sought the right legal advice. She had broken the ministerial code, even if she acted in good faith. As the Housing Minister, she did not seek the appropriate legal advice. This is the conclusion of the investigation. When it came to a property purchase, it meant she underpaid her tax, and even if she pays it back, Sophie, you know, HMRC might fine her, and for all of this she has had to go, as regretful as the Prime Minister, and clearly she feels about that.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You can kind of see some of the many reasons why they probably do feel regret in number 10 behind me, not least, as Beth was saying, because of that deputy leadership contest, which might not be something they can control at all. Beth, thank you very much indeed. Well, an awful lot to digest today. We're in the midst of a reshuffle. They're just doing the bad bit, I guess, at the minute. They're letting people go behind closed doors or on the phone. But then, of course, later we are going to expect to see some appointments as well. Big day for the Labour Party, and joining us now is the former political director to Keir Starmer, it's Luke Solomon, who is in Birmingham at the Reform Party conference. Luke, good to speak to you. I mean, we spoke on Monday, didn't we, ahead of what we've seen with Angela Rayner. Were you surprised by the decision today?
I wasn't surprised, and I think, you know, given the report, it was understandable what has happened. It is clearly a very sad political and personal day, both for Angela Rayner but for the wider Labour family. And I think there's no doubt how serious the situation is for the Labour government.
It was pretty clear that Keir Starmer didn't want to let her go, but he's had to. There was no wriggle room really in that letter from Sir Laurie Magnus. He found that she was in breach of the ministerial code. How much of a loss do you think she will be for this Labour government?
I think Angela is a massive loss for the Labour government. I think, you know, the role she's played over the last 4 years, 5 years in her deputy leadership has been incredible. She reaches parts of the electorate that other politicians aren't able to. And I think from your package that I watched just before this interview, it was clear the impact she's made. And, you know, as a government that has struggled in the first year, I think it's, you know, very fair just to pay credit to the role she played in the housing department, but also with bringing in a sort of generational change in employment rights, which will hopefully have a really long-lasting benefit to British people in this country.
You mentioned there the kind of rocky start that this government's had ever since you left, Luke, so we don't need to blame for that one. But it does feel like that is something that Keir Starmer needs to get a grip on. What does he need to do, in your opinion, from the reshuffle today?
I mean, I think it's clear that, and it appeared from the signals that are coming out, that this is going to be a wider reshuffle than people had probably initially had expected. There's obviously a position where, you know, we've lost Angela today. It will be a very sad day for the ministers who are leaving government as well. And you know, I want to pay, you know, tribute to them. I think the question really has to be for the Labour Party. Yes, this is a difficulty. How does the Prime Minister use this to his political advantage? It's clear that he's accepted that we need to move into phase 2. He made some changes to his staff at the beginning of this week. I think what we really need to do is have a government there where he puts the people he thinks he needs to be in the right positions, and they need to deliver and get on with the job at hand and focus on the big problems that are facing the country. I mean, I'm here at Reform Conference today, and you can see the energy in the room. You know, the Reform are knocking at the door of the Labour Party, and the Labour government, as Keir Starmer understands, knows he has to deliver for the British people to turn the polls around.
Luke, I just want to pause you for one moment there, because we have had a statement that Lucy Powell has issued on Twitter. Leader of the House of Commons, as Beth revealed earlier on, she has been asked to leave the government from the Prime Minister. She's put out a statement effectively saying that it's been an honour to serve, it's a role she's really enjoyed, and then also listing some of the achievements that she thinks that she's done in the role as well, tightening the rules on second jobs, making more family-friendly measures as well. She then goes on to say this has not been an easy time for the government. People want to see change and improvements to their difficult lives, nor in politics more generally, not least with the rise of abuse, misrepresentation, social media echo chambers and the call for easy answers. As women in public life, we experience this all the more. The future of our democracy looks uncertain, and Parliament has an important role to play. Lucy Powell responding there. There's a few women leaving, Luke, isn't there? Do you think that's a problem?
I mean, you know, first, just let me pay tribute to Lucy. She was somebody I worked very closely with, and I think has made a real impact both in opposition and government. I mean, let's wait and see the whole reshuffle. And, you know, it's often, you know, it's right we're seeing it in dribs and drabs. I think let's make an assessment of how the whole picture looks once we've seen the whole thing. You know, it's understandable with 24/7 news with Twitter that people focus on one departure or one announcement. I think let's wait and see what the whole government looks like when we see the cabinet hopefully later today.
And you did just mention about the fact you're in Reform Conference. I am interested to get a bit more from you on what the atmosphere there is like. Are they parking their tanks firmly on Labour's lawn?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is obviously an energy here. We saw Nigel Farage's speech earlier on. I think there's clearly an energy here, and Reform are seeking to use their platform to set out what they would do if they're in government. Now, the good thing for the Labour government is they are in government. They have got time on their side. We're still nearly the best part of 4 years away from when there needs to be a general election. And yes, it's understandable that people are focused on reform, and they're doing very well in the polls. But the government has it in its hands and its ability to turn things around and to demonstrate that the Labour Party is somebody who should be trusted in government again come the time of the next election.
Luke, thank you very much indeed. Luke Sullivan, there's someone who worked very closely, of course, with Keir Starmer, but also with Angela Rayner as well. Well, I did just want to bring back Beth, our political editor. You broke the Lucy Powell line earlier today. We've now had her statement
I'm
through.
just having a look at that,
You just reading it now. It feels to me like she didn't want to go. It looks like she's got unfinished business.
She clearly did not want to go. She says it's not been an easy time for the government. She also makes the point, and I think this is in a nod to perhaps how she's feeling, also to Angela Rayner, because I can tell you that I know a lot of female MPs, a lot of Labour female MPs are feeling very unhappy about the abuse of female MPs and feeling unhappy about the treatment of Angela Rayner, and people have strong feelings about this, but I'm just reporting that's what some of the women are feeling. And in her statement, Lucy Powell says it's not an easy time in politics with the rise of abuse, misrepresentation, and the call for easy answers in social media echo chambers. And she said women in public life experience this all the more. And she talks about the future of democracy looking uncertain. And she also talks about the role that she has had in politics and the pride she had in and being the leader of the House and some of the reforms she brought in. But that is a statement of a woman, of a female MP that clearly didn't want to leave office and also is popular amongst MPs. It's quite a powerful role, the House of Commons, because you're basically like the sort of herding the cats, if you like, and you're managing the MPs and you're listening to their concerns and you're getting the business through the House. So you're very in touch with the parliamentary party. So I wonder whether Lucy Powell, who's a prominent figure in the party, might become a bit of a thorn in the side of the Prime Minister. We'll have to see. But yeah, she's clearly a very frank statement there, talking about she clearly doesn't want to go, but also making that point about the rising level of abuse and women MPs having to take more of that.
Yeah, just on that, I hope you don't mind me asking you this, Beth. When you're talking about the abuse and what Lucy Powell has said, she said that that's what a lot of women are feeling, and then you said, I know people have strong feelings about that.
Yeah.
It's almost like kind of checking yourself, because you know the reaction that there will be on social media from some of the people who direct this abuse, right? Because we all get it, don't we?
Yeah, of course. But I mean, that's part of doing the job, and I think all women in public life doing these sorts of jobs, be it this side of the camera or being the politicians being interviewed and giving statements, they all feel it. And all our job is to do is to try and be balanced and reflect both sides of the argument, and people take shots at you, whatever you say or do, and all you can do, all I try to do, and I should think you try to do, is be balanced and let people take their own view. I mean, the point I'm trying to make about Angela Rayner and what her situation is it divides opinion, because there are many female MPs that feel that she has had undue scrutiny and abuse because of her status, her background, the fact that she doesn't fit into the typical politician box. She's a working class woman who came up through the trade union movement. She's not a university graduate and so on and so forth, and she got to the highest office, really, one of the highest offices in the land. And then there's another lot of people that say, no, she should have that level of scrutiny in it, and it just divides people. And I think it's important to acknowledge both sides. But the thing I would say is that scrawling graffiti of of disgusting language about her, and because you disagree with her, that is just not acceptable. And they're in a you know, when there's free speech and people can express views, that's okay, but abuse is not okay. And I think that does need to be called out.
Yeah, particularly, as you say, you know, in her resignation letter, she talked about the impact on her family as well, right? You know, there are many people who will pass through the thresholds of these homes, many people who will be impacted by this story. Rightly or wrongly, people are going to have all sorts of opinions on Angela Rayner, but yeah, I think that's something everyone can agree on. Just one other thing I did want to ask you as well, because look, on reshuffles, it's an opportunity for a reset, it's an opportunity, but then you also have a bit of a risk by who you're letting go of. You mentioned there about Lucy Powell being a thorn in the side of Keir Starmer. I just wonder, you know, you obviously know Angela Rayner. How do you think she is going to be on the backbenches? She's obviously loyal to Keir Starmer, but she's opinionated, right? She has policy issues that she feels strongly about.
I think that the manner of her resignation and the manner in which he accepted her resignation showed two politicians that, for now, want to look unified. He was incredibly supportive of her. She was incredibly supportive of him, acknowledging their friendship and his support. And it might be that there's a way back for her too. It's so early to say, and I imagine Angela Rayner will take some time to work out what she will do next, because it would have been but a week ago that she had no idea that she would be leaving government in this manner. But I think there will be more discussion going on in the coming months about the role of Angela Rayner in the Labour Party, because she's extremely popular with her members. She comes from the trade union movement. She's clearly far more left-wing than Keir Starmer has been on all sorts of matters. There were leaked documents about her calling for more taxation to Rachel Reeves in the spending review, which she kept her counsel on, but nevertheless, and often when she got into government, I would interview her about something like taxation, and I would be really trying to press her to speak out, but she really did stick with collective cabinet responsibility, and she towed the line. And yes, there is a question about whether or not the move from Angela Rayner from cabinet to backbenchers and the power base that she could build, if she does decide to mobilise, does that cause the Prime Minister a problem? But I think at the moment, given everything that's happened, the scrutiny she's been under, she's clearly very personally bruised. She's clearly feeling very bruised about her family. I think she'll have a regroup and decide what to do next. But there's no doubt she's a huge force in the Labour Party and in British politics. Nigel Farage actually was saying the other day that he, you know, she's the one he fears the most. She's the formidable threat, if you like, because he was saying that she has this ability to connect with people, whether you love her or loathe her, a bit like Nigel Farage sometimes, or Boris Johnson. And, you know, she definitely was, and you will know this, someone that people talked about a possible successor to Keir Starmer alongside Wes Streeting, that's also been talked up as a successor at some point in the future. So, yeah, I mean, kind of, this is not the end of Angela Rayner's story, and actually, when the dust settles, kind of what Angela Rayner does next, I think it's going to be a really, really interesting thing to watch. I mean, look, Sophie, I mean, total, I have no idea, but what if she decided to rerun as deputy leader and regain a mandate? I don't know. I wasn't sure this morning, when I got a sense that she might have to leave government, I wasn't sure if she would resign as deputy leader or not. She clearly decided, because of the findings of the probe, that she needed to resign all of her. But what if she decides, well, I'm going to, you know, I've resigned, I'm going to run again, I'm going to re-seek a mandate? I don't know. That's total speculation. I've got no idea. But, you know, you can see a world in which.
This is it.
So, look, we've got to see what does Angela Rayner do next.
I'm fascinated, because, as you say, she has got this loyalty to Keir Starmer, obviously. You know, she's not going to start mobilising. I think what you say about how she's bruised and will probably want to take some time away, that makes a lot of sense as well. But she's someone who cares so deeply about policy, and I know you get this all the time, but, you know, you hear about her, like, lobbying on behalf of cabinet ministers or Secretary of States to number 10, that there are certain things that she cares so deeply about. You can't imagine that she wants to give up that political influence in number 10, and not being disloyal in the media, but that force.
Well, the amount she wanted to stay in post is reflected by her decision to speak to her ex-husband, to speak to her children, to get the family court to lift injunctions on privacy. With agreement of her family to explain the situation. The fact she decided to do that, and you saw in that interview how personally difficult she found that to do, tells you everything you know about how much she wanted to stay on. Because when I said to her, did you think about packing it in? Would it have been easier to pack it in? I actually thought of it in that moment as a mother myself, and thinking about my children and how might that feel. And I think a lot of people, whilst they thought she should stand down, and Ruth Davidson on the pod yesterday, when we did our electoral dysfunction pod, was really clear. She said, I have human sympathy for Angela Rayner, but I absolutely think she's a hypocrite and she should stand down. That was Ruth's view. But, whatever your view of what she did, you can be moved by the fact that it's also a personal story, and it is a woman in public life trying to protect children, whilst also... So the fact that she actually decided to fight on with permission of her family and support from her family shows you how much she wanted to stay on. And that's what I mean about, does she regroup? This is a woman that has faced huge adversity in her life, and if you go and read Angela Rayner's backstory, you will see adversity in bucket loads. And so it's very interesting to see what she does next, how she regroups, does she kind of go again? I mean, she's not an old woman. She's what, in her mid-40s? She's a young woman. The other thing I would say about it is that, and you've watched all these shadow cabinet ministers come in. She just had a programme and she ran with it as soon as she went to government. So workers' rights, reorganisation of councils, house building. Angela Rayner had built a plan for government, and she came in and hit the ground running, and actually disappeared quite a lot from public view because she wanted to do the job. So that's going to be very hard to let go of, but let's see where she lands up.
It's a very good point, actually, and it's the criticism of others that perhaps they didn't have the programme for government. This is a woman who knew what she wanted to do, and she knows she's still got stuff she wants to do as well. Beth, thank you very much indeed. Beth Rigby there, our political editor. Well, of course, we're talking about the big political news today, the resignation of Angela Rayner and the reshuffle that has started right now. We'll bring you full details of that, of course, here in Downing Street. In the meantime, we're joined by the executive editor at Politico and also, of course, at Politics at Sam & Ann's, co-host Anne McElvoy. Great to have you on the programme. Angela Rayner, what a loss do you think will she be for the government?
I think Angela Rayner is a loss for the government in many ways because she was a great connector, and as one of the weaknesses, Sophie, we've often spoken about, Keir Starmer clearly has ideas. He has things that he wants to get done, but he finds difficult to connect his personal vision of politics to policy and to priorities. Angela Rayner, and I think we had Beth reflecting on it just there with you, she does have a kind of vision for politics. She sits a bit more squarely towards the left of the centre of the Labour Party than Keir Starmer, or at least than Keir Starmer these days. So some people will certainly say that is a loss. She has character. People like to engage with her on the whole. I mean, she also is a bit Marmite. She makes enemies easily. I think the problem is the circumstances of her going, and that will leave a taste that is very, very bitter in Labour's mouth, because it was such a miscalculation. And however many excuses you can make in explanations about her backstory, and that it was great to have someone come from such a humble background to a high position, well, you can't then infantilise them by saying, and as a result, if something goes wrong, which if it went wrong for any senior politician would likely to see them have to leave office, well, there's a special kind of Ange clause. And I think that is a difficulty, even in the messaging. A lot of sympathy for her today, but even in the messaging, there's still that undertone of, well, this has all been very difficult for Angela, but actually it's very, very difficult for Keir Starmer, and it's very, very damaging to the government, and that's the bigger story.
Yeah, this is it, isn't it? The damage to Number 10 and the government. She was someone who knew exactly what she wanted to do, and she had a clear role in government. Now we've got the reshuffle. For a Prime Minister who's had, I think it's fair to say, such a bumpy first year in office, what do you think he needs to do today?
Well, I mean, we're seeing some changes already coming in at that mid-level with Lucy Powell out there as leader of the Commons. But that you could easily swap those people around and no one would notice much difference unless they had the fortune or misfortune like Sam Coates and me and you to be in that sort of bubble of political thought and opinion and news. So I think what he really needs to do is make clear in this reshuffle that there is an exam question. What is it you're trying to do with it? That it doesn't just look like shifting deck chairs because you've had a dreadful day and a dreadful week for Labour. This was supposed to be phase 2. And I know the jokes write themselves, and I can, practically predict they'll figure in the next Private Eye and everywhere else. But if this was phase 2, heaven knows what they've got in store for us all in phase 3. That, in a way, not to be unduly cynical, because these are difficult times for governments. Yeah, they need to address that. What is this reshuffle for? What would change as a result that voters would notice? Not least given the other guy on the stage today, Nigel Farage, absolutely looking like the rock star of the right.
Or on TV, but I've lost the sound of Anne McElroy. I'm just going to step out of this shot because I can't hear anything. Can someone call the gallery now? Because I don't know if I'm on air or anything. Is the feed totally gone? So am I not on air?
It's 3 o'clock. You're watching Sky News Live, coming to you from Downing Street through the course of the afternoon. The big breaking news, of course, from Westminster today. The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, resigning from government after Sir Keir Starmer's ethics advisor found she breached the ministerial code when she failed to pay enough stamp duty on her second home. Well, Sophy Magnus found she acted with integrity but should have sought more tax advice. And now the reshuffle begins. We're going to bring you all the twists and turns through the course of the afternoon as the Prime Minister makes changes to his cabinet. Well, we already know some changes. The first to go, Lucy Powell, who has been sacked as leader of the House of Commons. Also sacked, Ian Murray, leaving his position as Scotland's secretary. Well, whilst all that's happening in Downing Street and across the Labour estate, Reform kicking off their conference in Birmingham today. The leader of the party, Nigel Farage, gave this reaction to the news.
You simply can't get away, can you, from being the Housing Secretary and avoiding £40,000 of council tax. And it screams to entitlement. It screams to a government that, despite all the promises that this would be a new, different kind of politics, is as bad, if not worse, than the one that went before.
Well, obviously, as governments have their issues, opposition parties take the moment to seize that moment. It's the Conservative leader, Keir Starmer, now reacting to Angela Rayner's resignation. This is what she had to say.
That is the right decision. It should have happened a long time ago. It shouldn't have taken the Conservative Party continually raising this issue, as we did throughout the summer, pointing out all sorts of issues with the story she'd been telling, where she was living, why she was on the electoral roll at a property she said wasn't her main residence. We have been on this issue from day one because we think it is really important that lawmakers shouldn't be lawbreakers, but also the Housing Secretary should be able to have her housing issues in order. If they're going to be putting property taxes on the rest of us, then they need to come clean about their own affairs.
Keir Starmer there. Well, let's read you a little of the letter to the Prime Minister from his standards advisor, Sophy Magnus. In it, he writes the following: I believe Ms Rayner has acted with integrity and a dedicated and exemplary commitment to public service. I consider, however, that her unfortunate failure to settle her SDLT, stamp duty liability tax, liability at the correct level, coupled with the fact that this was established only following intensive public scrutiny, leads me to advise you that, in relation to this matter, she cannot be considered to have met highest possible standards of proper conduct, as envisaged by the Code. Accordingly, it is with deep regret that I must advise you that in these circumstances, I consider the Code to have been breached. Well, that was the letter from Sophy Magnus to the Prime Minister. And of course, Angela Rayner referring herself to Sophy Magnus, and that investigation took only a matter of a couple of days. We've seen previous ones taking somewhat longer, but the conclusion was swift. Like I say, lots of reaction from the opposition parties. Here's Fred Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats.
It's clear Angela Rayner's position was no longer tenable. I just hope the government can now move on to help the millions of people in our country who are having a tough time. The cost of living is hitting so many people. Carers and our healthcare system, they need more support. So once we've got this out of the way, please can we focus on what people need, on cost of living and on health. I always said that if the ethics advisor said she'd broken the rules, she had to go and that her position would become untenable, as it appears to have done. My sympathy was with her as a parent of a disabled child. I'm a parent of a disabled child, and there are hundreds of thousands out there, and we think about what would happen when we die, when we're gone. But you still have to abide by all the rules, particularly when you're Deputy Prime Minister and a senior politician. And if she's broken the rules, as it appears she has, she had to go.
Leader of the Lib Dems, Davey, while Angela Rayner's resignation follows an exclusive interview with the former Deputy Prime Minister and our political editor, Beth Rigby. Let's take a listen to what she had to say when asked if her position in government was untenable.
Well, I'm hoping people I can set the record straight, and I've given those personal information that people can see what's happened and can see that I wasn't trying to dodge tax or any of the accusations that were pushed onto me, that I relied on advice from lawyers. That advice from lawyers was inaccurate, and as soon as I was made aware of that from the leading tax expert who we asked to look at this, I am now taking all of the steps that anyone in those circumstances who rely on advice and that advice is wrong, I'm taking the steps to correct that. So hopefully people can see that there isn't any intention to deceive, to avoid, to be hypocritical in the way in which I've conducted myself.
Pleased to bring in Sir Craig Oliver, former Director of Communications at 10 Downing Street between 2011 and 2016, joining us live from Canterbury. Good to have you with us. Just minded the fact that that clip we've just played there was only on Wednesday. Today is Friday, and it's a very different landscape now for Angela Rayner. What do you make of the pace of change that we've seen?
Well, I think that they wanted to get the investigation done as quickly and as cleanly as possible, and they've done that. And I think that that's one good thing for Keir Starmer. At least it was very relatively clean and quick and done. But there's no getting away from it. It is a complete mess. He started the week relaunching his government, and he's ending it with a reshuffle. And the thing about reshuffles is you're never really quite sure where they're going to land, particularly if they haven't been pre-planned. So all sorts of consequences could come out of this that are unforeseen. And then the other thing that I think that's come from this is because she was deputy leader of the Labour Party, at some stage there is going to have to be an election for that role. And that, I think, is really going to be a battle for the heart and soul of the Labour Party, where there's going to be all sorts of debates on policy, on taxation, that kind of thing. And if you're a sitting government, you really don't need that kind of thing going on.
What impact on the psyche and the mentality and kind of almost the mental health of the party do reshuffles like this have?
Well, I think the huge issue that is facing this government at the moment is most people who take a keen interest in politics like you and I do should at least be able to have a stab at, look, what is this government for? Who is it for? What is it trying to do? And there have been many, many incarnations of them attempting to do that, but it somehow just doesn't stick. They're 14 months in. It isn't clear what the overriding mission of this government is. And they seem to be developing a reputation for a kind of haplessness. There's been a huge number of ministers who've really gone in the last year, I think one every 43 days. To lose your deputy leader and somebody who is responsible for one of the most important policies in your government, can we build enough houses, and has a symbolic importance of somebody like Angela Rayner, really is problematic. And I think that this is a government that's really desperately trying to cling on and try and get to a stage where it can get its head above water. It can try and persuade people that it is doing something. But this has been a complete open goal today. You saw what Nigel Farage was saying at his reform conference. You saw what Kemi Badenoch was saying. This is a real open goal, and the government is really going to have to do something very, very quick to try and staunch the bleeding.
And it's worth remembering, of course, Angela Rayner, Deputy Prime Minister, Deputy Leader of the Labour Party and the Housing Minister as well. So you've kind of got those three eggs in that one basket.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's a 3-in-1. So the key policy role for the government, building houses in this country, demonstrating. I think anybody who knows anything about the housing market knew it was always going to be a tall order to build 300,000 houses a year or 1.5 million. So the pressure was really on in that role. There's a particular symbolic importance of being deputy leader of the Labour Party. That requires another election, as we've talked about. And then there's also Angela Rayner played a very important role for Keir Starmer. They did actually have a rough time initially, and there was some sort of sense of him not really wanting her to be central to his administration. They seem to have found an accommodation, and she was used as somebody who could talk to the backbenchers, persuade them maybe that, that the left wing of the party should go along with what this government was doing. That feels like it's all gone now. And is she now actually going to be sitting on the backbenches, able to say, look, this report did say that I broke the ministerial code, but it was very clear that my integrity remains intact. And actually, she starts becoming a lightning rod on the backbenches. There's very, very little in this to be seen as positive. You can use a crisis and try and turn it into an opportunity. And I think Keir Starmer will probably be trying to do that in terms of this reshuffle and trying to get a grip. But that's a very thin hope, I think.
Like you say, few small wins. If you were to be advising the PM right now, and I appreciate your time in Downing Street was under a different party, but if you were advising a Labour Party at the moment, where would you advise them to look for those wins and to try and monopolise on them?
I think they look like they're allowing the agenda to be set for them consistently. Nigel Farage, over the last 6 to 8 weeks, has been consistently in charge of the agenda of this country. And it looks like the government, and indeed the official opposition, is chasing him. They need to be able to say, look, we are in charge. We are the government that was elected. We have an agenda that is clear and we know what we're doing. At the moment, it does not look like this is a government that has got clarity of purpose, clarity of vision. It seems like it is having a whole series of unfortunate events happening to it that it can't really control. And I think it really does need a moment where there's real grip established, a line drawn, clarity of message and strategy that is delivered moving forward. That has eluded this government for the last 14 months, despite the fact that it has a huge majority and had plenty of time to prepare for government. It seems unlikely that it would be able to do that, but you never know. Anything's possible.
Joining us live from Canterbury, former Director of Communications at 10 Downing Street, Sir Craig Oliver. Good to have you with us. Thank you so much. Well, let's take you back to the heart of all the action, 10 Downing Street and Sophy Ridge. Sophie.
Thanks, Gareth. Welcome back to Downing Street. We did have a few comms issues, which you might have gathered if you'd heard me on air about 10 minutes ago, but we're now back and running, which is good because lots of action is happening here today. We, of course, had that resignation of Angela Rayner, one of the most formidable forces here in Westminster. And now what is turning out to be a pretty wide-ranging reshuffle is up and running. Let's bring in our political editor, Beth Rigby, at this point, shall we? So we've seen the statement from Lucy Powell. We know that she's out. And we've also now had the statement through from Ian Murray, the Secretary of State for Scotland.
Sophie. And the reason I'm fussing around on my phone is I'm just trying to pull up that statement and have a look at it. And rather like Lucy Powell, Ian Murray has confirmed he's left government, and he clearly is not very happy about it. Unsurprisingly, he says, I am hugely disappointed to be leaving government with so much done and so much more to do. You remember he was the Scottish Secretary and actually was the last surviving Labour MP. Do you remember that? When kind of the SNP wipeout of Labour in Scotland, and Ian Murray was the only one left. And he says he's very disappointed. And he says, I remain as impatient for change as the public politics in the UK and elsewhere is now at a dangerous crossroads. The responsibility of us in all public life to make an argument for progressive change. So Ian Murray is out. You remember he survived that SNP wipeout, near wipeout in 2015. He was the last Labour MP standing. He's gone on in the Starmer administration to be the Scottish Secretary, and now he has been forced to stand down.
And I guess
Tamara, our colleagues, pointing out to me that there's a potentially very rapid rise for Kirsty McNeil, his deputy, who was elected only last year, and she's a former advisor from Gordon Brown, so That's Tamara. Very helpful, that, Tamara. Thank you. Sending
any more tips?
Yeah, any more tips? Put my phone on. I might make out they're mine.
It's interesting, isn't it, with reshuffles? Because look, there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity for a reset to bring in some really talented people to promote some of the new intake. But there's risk as well, because if we've seen with both Lucy Powell and Ian Murray, they don't seem that happy.
No, of course there is, and you're seeing two people there that are sore from having to step back from cabinet and are making it clear in their statements that they are going to be voices on the backbenchers. But you know, Keir Starmer finds himself in this situation. He has had to accept the resignation of Angela Rayner. It's clear that she was either going to jump or she would have been pushed because of the fact she did not uphold the highest standards in public life, and she broke the ministerial code. And now he's gone for a wider reshuffle. And part of that, I think, is, you know, if you've got to do it, you might as well take control of the situation and then put in some of the changes. And I wonder whether by the end of the day we might see some eye-catching appointments in areas where perhaps the Prime Minister thinks that the government need to go further. As I was saying, the one thing we do know also is that when it comes to the cabinet, Rachel Reeves is staying put. Lots of Labour MPs felt that maybe Rachel Reeves needed to go. They are worried about her fiscal rules. They think it constrains the economy and the government's tax and spend policy too much. That was the point Annalise Dodds, a former Shadow Chancellor, to Keir Starmer actually. She was making that point to me in an interview before the summer, saying maybe more radical thought on the economy is needed, but Rachel Reeves is staying put. And really, I think the reason that has been known to all of us is because they don't want it to look like she is moving, because they don't want to unsettle the markets. They've got enough uncertainty at the moment without that. I should say, actually, just in terms of the perspective that I've got from insiders in Number 10 about this reshuffle, you know, what they would say is that the government's now taking the opportunity to refresh and update the team, bring forward a reshuffle that they had planned. So they're going to do something, they're saying later in the year, they're bringing that forward and putting in place a team best able to rise to the challenge of national renewal. So that is the way Number 10 want to spin it. They're saying, although the timing was not dictated by the Prime Minister, so an admission that this is coming rather sooner than perhaps he would have liked, he is now determined to invigorate and refresh the team. So again, instead of being forced into it and doing a couple of moves in order to replace Rayner, he's like, well, I'm in this position anyway, I might as well do the reset and then try to move on.
And if it does take a few headlines away from the fact that he's just lost Angela Rayner from the cabinet after she was found to breach the ministerial code, well, all the better. Beth, thank you very much indeed. Beth Rigby there, our political editor. Well, it is a big day here in Downing Street. We are, of course, awaiting all of the movements in the reshuffle that we're expecting and all the ramifications of the resignation of Angela Rayner. But at the same time, there is big news going on in Birmingham as well, where Reform have kicked off their conference. Nigel Farage has been speaking, and our political correspondent Rob Powell is there for us. Rob, what's the atmosphere like?
Yeah, it feels very much like, more like one of the conferences you would get from the mainstream parties. I was chatting to a colleague who was here last year, I wasn't here, and she said, well, the bar was about 10 times as big last year and there wasn't as many stands and business stands and kiosks and things like that. This time, you've kind of got what you get used to at Tory conference, at Labour conference, on a smaller scale, yes, but I think that's part of the message they're trying to put across here, is that they're trying to professionalise as a party. They've turned from a kind of ragtag protest group into a serious political party, and they say they're now on the road to being, or in the view of some Reform figures, already are a government in waiting. The conference was somewhat overshadowed, I think, earlier, or thrown off course, if you like, a little, by that news coming out of Westminster about Angela Rayner's resignation. We were expecting Nigel Farage's leader's speech to be at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. And then about 20 to 1, we got an email saying it's going to happen in 20 minutes' time. So everyone trooped into the auditorium. Clearly, Reform playing a pretty clever game here, actually. They know that all the news channels are rolling on this news. but they also know that we have to take Nigel Farage's speech as well for balance reasons. So they basically want to insert their leader right into the immediate reaction from this and really start to kind of weave that into their broader political message and pitch to the country that, in their view, the main two parties and politics as a mainstream game is broken, and that's why it needs to be swept away, and that's why reform needs to come in. And that was very much the message that Nigel Farage was putting across when he was on the stage earlier. Have a listen to a flavour of it here.
You simply can't get away, can you, from being the Housing Secretary and avoiding £40,000 of council tax. And it screams to entitlement. It screams to a government that, despite all the promises that this would be a new, different kind of politics, is as bad, if not worse, than the one that went before.
So there you go, more of the same, basically, is the message that Nigel Farage is trying to put across. I was chatting to some of his MPs, Lee Anderson, Richard Tice afterwards, and put it to them that if the accusation here is that this is more chaos under Labour, more sort of Tory-style chaos that we saw before, and now it's happening under the other guys, well, actually, Reform as a party is not necessarily always known for its steady sailing. And about a year after the election, they'd already lost 2 of their MPs for internal fights, other scandals revealed in newspapers as well. And they sort of tried to shrug that off and said, look, does this look like chaos? This is a proper party. But I think that is a legitimate question, given what Reform is trying to put across at this conference is, look, we're ready for power. We're ready to turn into a proper political force with policies and credible people that can work in various departments. That practically, they've got a fair old amount of chaos that they've gone through over the last year as well, and in pretty short order after the election of these guys. In policies as well, you see big question marks hanging over some of their fiscal policy from the last manifesto, talk about what they want to do with the top rate of income tax, and what they want to do with the lower rate at which you start paying income tax and how much that would cost, and whether they genuinely can say they'll make all that money back from things like scrapping net zero and getting rid of diversity strategies. So I don't think the policy genuinely is all there yet. And actually, when you talk to members here, many of them admit that as well. They say, look, this is a process. This is basically starting this journey and turning and professionalising into a political operation, and we're not going to get there yet. I think actually what we have seen more of today from Nigel Farage especially is pretty much what he has been doing for the last 2 decades of his political career. He's sort of giving voice to the big sense of disenfranchisement and miserableness really across the country, and he's capitalising on the misfortunes of others, on the misfortunes of mainstream politicians. So he's still doing that. It's still the same thing he's been doing for a long time. They are doing it now in a slicker way and in a more clever way, and with far fewer bloopers, if you like, far fewer missteps than they have in the past.
Rob, thank you very much indeed. Rob Powell there on Reform's conference in Birmingham, where Nigel Farage is trying to show that they're ready for government just as soon as the election is called. Well, let's return to our main story today, shall we, which is, of course, the resignation of Angela Rayner and the subsequent reshuffle that's going on as well. Joining us now is Andy McDonnell, the Labour MP for Middlesbrough and Thornaby East. Good to have you on the programme. Angela Rayner, what do you make of her departure? How much of a blow was it for Keir Starmer?
Well, it's a huge blow to all of us in the Labour movement. Angela's a towering figure, and she's achieved remarkable things, and she leaves behind a great legacy. But there has been that promise to improve the standards in public office. We saw in the last term of the last government how not to do things, with an independent ethics advisor. This process has reached its natural conclusion. I don't think Angela had any choice. The position was untenable, but she should be proud of her legacy. And on a personal level, I'm very sorry for her, because this will be extraordinarily painful.
She was, I think it's fair to say, a champion of the left, of working class voters, people that she felt that she had an affinity with because of her background. With the reshuffle coming up, how concerned are you, or how confident, I guess, are you about the changes and the direction that Keir Starmer chooses to go in?
Well, I worked with Angela in terms of the New Deal for Working People that resulted in the Employment Rights Bill. That's the biggest transformation in workers' rights and protections in a generation. And that is well on its way to royal assent. She's brought in the protection for renters, introduced English devolution bill, and of course votes for 16 and 17-year-olds. So that's a terrific shift. And she can, in the fullness of time, just reflect upon that as being her enduring legacy. And there will be no turning back from that, I'm quite convinced. But where the party now goes is crucially important. And electing her successor is a big part of that. And it's an opportunity for the party that we can recalibrate and refocus, but remembering that we are indeed a broad church. So it's imperative that the membership has a proper choice, a democratic choice going into the re-election of a deputy leader of the Labour Party. And I trust that colleagues in Number 10 and in the PLP broadly will accept that that is necessary because the membership of the party will settle for nothing less.
I'm really interested to hear you say that because, of course, her ministerial roles, Keir Starmer has control of. He can appoint basically who he wants, but the deputy leadership, as you say, that is down to Labour members. You know, you've got a bit of a platform here. Do you want to throw some names out? Are there any of your colleagues who you'd like to see, you know, having a shot at it?
I genuinely can't offer that. There's a wealth of talent across the PLP, and I think we'll all be surprised about who emerges. But rest assured, there are several of my colleagues who could come forward and do this job and do it brilliantly well, with the traditions of the Labour movement right at the heart of their programme. So I await with great interest who's going to come forward, but it's important that we do that openly and transparently and in a democratic manner. What I think would be a travesty if we were to rush this through. I mean, the Cabinet got the ability to see somebody appointed up to the conference itself, but thereafter we must have an open contest, and let's see who comes forward and can garner support. But that breadth of tradition is critically important for the Labour Party and the wider movement.
I'm interested your emphasis there on having an open contest, on your message effectively to Number 10 and the Leader's Office that there needs to be the breadth of choice for members. In other words, you want left-wing candidates on the ballot as well as more centrist ones. Are you worried about a stitch-up then? What would a stitch-up look like?
Well, I've heard comments already that that's how it must go, and I think that would be a real error. The membership will be pretty pissed off if we have a stitch-up and there isn't an opportunity to have a proper contest. That's the Labour Party at its best, when it can have that discussion and that debate and options put before it. If there's going to be no option, and I'm afraid that's not consistent with the traditions of the party, and it's not consistent with the views and values of the membership. So we've got to remember who we are and what we stand for. And when we come into this, we've got to listen to our membership, where we've got a proud tradition and we should honour it.
Do you think that there's, do you have any sympathy for Keir Starmer? He might be thinking, a kind of war with the left is the last thing he needs right now. He's already got Jeremy Corbyn's party jumping at the bit. You've got the new leader of the Greens, Zach Polanski. The last thing he may feel he needs is a left-wing candidate trying to pull him in a direction that he doesn't want to go in.
Well, he doesn't need to. We don't need to have a war. We can have a discussion and a debate and an exchange of ideas and vision. That's perfectly proper. He's taken the party in a particular direction. There are many people within the movement who think some of those have been missteps, and we'd like to see that corrected. The Labour government has achieved a great many wonderful things, but it's undoubted that some of the things that have happened have not gone down well with the public. So if we can run away from that discussion if we wish, but it's not going to play well with the electorate. We know how we're currently perceived, and if we want to just stick at that, then we carry on along that in that vein. If we want to arrest it and turn it around, we've got to address those fundamental key issues that speak to people's lived experience. And at the moment, I'm afraid they're telling us that we're not addressing them. So let's not run away from the opportunity to have that very engagement with people, with the membership, so it's reflected in that debate.
If you talk to people in government, many secretaries of state say that Angela Rayner was someone who effectively championed their causes with the Treasury, for example, or who was willing to come up with policy ideas or suggestions, a voice of the left, I guess, in a very prominent position in the government with the ear of the Prime Minister. Are you worried about what that will mean, her loss from that role?
Oh, I think she's a huge talent, and she's been an enormous influence within government. And I think any government is strengthened by people of the caliber and ability of Angela Rayner, and to marginalise that now would, in my view, be the wrong way to go. So I trust that the leadership will take stock and reflect upon the wider issues. It's not simply about Angela Rayner's departure, sad as that is. This is the opportunity to reflect and think, what direction are we now going to go in? Because we talked about delivery now. Well, what are we going to deliver? Because it has to be about improved living conditions and outcomes for the people we're sent to Parliament to represent. And that's what we should be focusing on. And Angela was a major contributor in that respect. And we need to make sure that we don't lose that momentum over the next several years.
OK, really good to talk today. Thank you very much for coming on Sky News. Well, just listening to that interview does make you reflect on just how interesting the battle for the deputy leadership of the party is going to be. You can see those on the left already trying to make sure that one of their candidates is on the ballot, that there's an open contest, it's not a stitch-up. That could be perhaps a potential headache for Keir Starmer if he does want to continue going in a more centrist direction. Well, of course, if you're just joining us, there's big news in Westminster. Angela Rayner has resigned from all three of her posts, Deputy Prime Minister, Housing Secretary and Deputy Leader of the Labour Party as well. And a reshuffle is now underway. Rachel Reeves is staying in post, but we know that Ian Murray and Lucy Powell are both leaving the government. And of course, at times like this of upheaval, of uncertainty, the opposition try and make hay. And in the past few minutes, the Conservative Party chair, Kevin Hollinrake, has given his reaction.
Well, I think she had no choice. I mean, it's quite clear what she'd done is that she'd failed to pay the right amount of tax. She'd dodged the tax. I think then she's gone on to lie about it and to cover up that. And as the independent advisor said today in his letter, basically this would never have come to light had it not been for intensive public scrutiny. In other words, this is being covered up. And there's some real questions to ask now, still of Angela Rayner, but also of Keir Starmer.
Kevin Hollinrake there giving his direction and his reaction, of course, to the big breaking news from Westminster today. And that, of course, is the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, has resigned from government after Sir Keir Starmer's ethics advisor found she breached the ministerial code when she failed to pay enough stamp duty on her second home. Sir Lawrie Magnus found she acted with integrity, but should have sought more tax advice. Well, the Prime Minister is now carrying out a reshuffle of his cabinet. The first person to go was Lucy Powell, who's been sacked as leader of the House of Commons. Also sacked Ian Murray, leaving his position as Scotland Secretary. Well, of course, we'll bring you all of the twists and turns as they happen, and reshuffle days are always unpredictable. But first, our political correspondent Rob Powell reports.
Mr. Speaker, let me put this to him simply. If it was a police officer, a teacher, a doctor, we would expect the independent process to be followed and not changed after the verdict. It's one rule for them and one rule for the rest of us.
An outspoken and unconventional politician, Angela Rayner was never afraid of taking the fight to her opponents.
They're using the rules as it seems fit for them, and actually now people are seeing it's one rule for them and one rule for everybody else. It's a disgrace what they've done. They've undermined Parliament, they've undermined our democracy.
But a row over property tax found her on the receiving end of difficult questions.
But just to be clear, you've referred yourself to the Standards Commissioner, you've contacted the tax revenue and said you could be liable for more tax. Presumably you deeply regret this because of potentially the fallout for you. Do you think your position, Angela Rayner, even though you've explained it, do you think it's sustainable? Do you think you can carry on as particularly Housing Minister?
Well, I made a mistake based upon the advice that I relied upon, that I received at the time, and a leading expert has now said that advice was wrong. I think hopefully most people can see if you rely on advice given to you by lawyers and you follow that process and then you find out that that process is wrong and that advice was wrong, I'm rectifying it at the earliest opportunity. People make mistakes, but I conducted myself in trying to do the right thing, and I hope that people can see that.
Angela Rayner's route to the top of government was an unusual one. Born in Stockport, she left school at 16 whilst pregnant and with no qualifications. After training in social care, she became a union official before then joining Labour. Speaking before she entered government, she said she initially found Parliament an alien environment.
When you got to Westminster, did you just think there's no one like me here? Was it lonely or difficult?
I didn't understand that it was such a big network here. I'd never, I've been to London a couple of times as a union rep to our headquarters for the union, but before then, when I was growing up, my world was 3 streets on the estate I grew up in. I didn't even go to Manchester. I lived in Stockport, which is a town just outside of Manchester. Manchester was a huge thing, never mind London, never mind, politics and government. But the driving force that I've always had is about trying to do the right thing. My nana taught me that. She said, always do your best. Always do your best. And I've always tried to do the right thing. And when I became pregnant at 16, I wanted to prove that I could be a good mum. I wanted to love my child and do the best I can for him.
First elected to the Greater Manchester seat of Ashton-under-Lyne in 2015, Angela Rayner was appointed Shadow Education Secretary a year later. Seen as on the left of Labour, she was one of a handful of MPs who backed Jeremy Corbyn when he fought a leadership challenge after the EU referendum. She remained in his shadow cabinet throughout his time in office and through the Brexit battles, establishing a reputation for straight and colourful speaking.
It came out of the first day of talks and the Europeans got exactly what they wanted and, we rolled over and let them tickle our belly.
Tipped as a leadership candidate, Angela Rayner instead ran and was elected as Labour deputy to Sir Keir Starmer after 2019's election loss. After initially handing her a string of shadow cabinet job titles, Sir Keir attempted to demote her after disappointing local election results in 2021. But she resisted, won the power struggle that followed, and was handed an even bigger job, solidifying her position as a popular and influential voice on the left of the party.
And what a contrast to a government that is taking £1,400 out of the pockets of a nurse. Over £2 billion that they're giving to taxpayers' money has been dished out to their Tory donors and mates and ministers.
But she sometimes went too far and was criticised that year for calling Conservatives scum.
You said last night, we cannot get any worse than a bunch of scum, homophobic, racist, misogynist, absolute pile of banana republic, Etonian piece of scum. Is that the kind of civility that the Starmer-Rayner Labour Party envisages?
Well, look, that was post-watershed, as we'd say, with a group of activists at an event last night.
She eventually apologised for those comments, but still didn't shy away from confrontation in the Commons.
Mr. Speaker, I know that it is great to be here with the Right Honourable Lady, the Shadow Secretary of State, for the future of work. We know the future of the job that she has in mind.
Mr. Speaker, I've heard on the grapevine there might be a vacancy for Prime Minister soon, so maybe I should have aspirations.
A very different politician to the former barrister she served under, Angela Rayner was seen as a more traditional Labour voice who could speak to the party's heartlands. After the successful election campaign, she found herself in charge of important swathes of policy, overseeing changes to planning and house building, while also taking on responsibility for workers' rights.
But my mission
is not just to build houses, it's to build homes, because we cannot build at any cost. These new homes must be warm, secure, and most importantly, safe. I know firsthand the difference a decent home can make. When I was growing up, we didn't have a lot, but we had a safe and secure home. Today, not everyone does.
But questions about her property arrangements started to emerge even before the election. Inquiries by the police and the tax office into homes she owned in the northwest seemed to put her in the clear. It was the purchase of a flat on the south coast that proved her undoing, though. A politician widely thought of as a potential successor to Sir Keir Starmer, brought down by the type of scandal she had so often called out. Rob Powell, Sky News in Westminster.
Rob Powell there reporting on the backgrounds of Angela Rayner, and really just listening to his report, it is worth reflecting what a force she was within this government. She had the ear of Keir Starmer. They weren't natural allies, but they did have a very productive working relationship. But also, she was clearly a voice of the left around that cabinet table. Someone who had her own creative ideas on everything from tax, what she would tell the Treasury, to crime in the Home Office. Whenever I speak to many members of the government, they point to Angela Rayner as effectively a voice on their behalf, acting and amplifying their concerns to Number 10 or to the Treasury if necessary. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see, after she's, I guess, licked her bruises and taken a bit of time out to try and recuperate, how she models her approach as a backbench MP, because something tells me it's not going to be the last we see of Angela Rayner. Well, let's take a look now, shall we, in some detail at how the row over her tax affairs eventually led to Angela Rayner's resignation. So in 2020, Angela Rayner and her then husband created a trust to provide for their son, who has lifelong disabilities. 3 years later, the Deputy Prime Minister and her husband then divorced, and partial interest in their family home in Ashton was then transferred into that trust created for their son. In January this year, Ms Rayner sold her final interest in that home to the trust, and then in May she bought a flat in Hove for £800,000, and she paid £30,000 in stamp duty. So that means she saved £40,000 by not paying a higher rate that's reserved for additional home purchases. Well, last Friday, she instructed a King's Counsel to review her position on that issue. And on Monday, lawyers provided a draft opinion while seeking further information. It was at that point that a court order around details of Angela Rayner's family was still in place at this time. But on Tuesday, that court order was then lifted at the request of Angela Rayner. And then on Wednesday, she was given the final legal advice and then referred herself to the Standards Commissioner, telling Beth Rigby that she'd underpaid stamp duty on the Hove flat. So that is the timeline of what has happened there. The upshot, of course, is that Angela Rayner has resigned. It was an affectionate, a sad, I guess, emotional exchange of letters between herself and Keir Starmer, but now we are in the midst of a reshuffle, and it does seem that all the noises this morning have pointed towards it being much more wide-ranging than it needs to be. Keir Starmer effectively taking the opportunity for a bit of a reset. We know that Lucy Powell has left her position as Leader of the House. We know that Ian Murray has also been sacked as Scottish Secretary, and there's all kinds of rumours flying around at the minute. I am going to be completely honest with you. The phones are alive here in Westminster. I don't think I've got any of them confirmed enough to tell any of you at this point, but I think it is fair to say that we are expecting a significant amount of movement around that cabinet table. Is Keir Starmer going to successfully take this moment to reset the government, to set a new narrative on what is a difficult day on paper? Well, lots to discuss. A short time ago, I spoke to the executive editor at Politico and the co-host of Politics at Sam and Anne's. That is Anne McElvoy.
I think Angela Rayner is a loss for the government in many ways because she was a great connector, and as one of the weaknesses, Sophy, we've often spoken about, Keir Starmer clearly has ideas. He has things that he wants to get done, but he finds difficult to connect his personal vision of politics to policy and to priorities. Angela Rayner, and I think we had Beth reflecting on it just there with you, she does have a kind of vision for politics. She sits a bit more squarely towards the left of the centre of the Labour Party than Keir Starmer, or at least than Keir Starmer these days. So some people will certainly say that is a loss. She has character. People like to engage with her on the whole. I mean, she also is a bit Marmite. She makes enemies easily. I think the problem is the circumstances of her going, and that will leave a taste that is very, very bitter in Labour's mouth, because it was such a miscalculation. And however many excuses you can make in explanations about her backstory, and that it was great to have someone come from such a humble background to a high position, well, you can't then infantilise them by saying, and as a result, if something goes wrong, which if it went wrong for any senior politician would likely to see them have to leave office, well, there's a special kind of Ange clause. And I think that is a difficulty. Even in the messaging, a lot of sympathy for her today, but even in the messaging, there's still that undertone of, well, this has all been very difficult for Angela, but actually it's very, very difficult for Keir Starmer, and it's very, very damaging to the government, and that's the bigger story.
Yeah, this is it, isn't it? The damage to Number 10 and the government. She was someone who knew exactly what she wanted to do, and she had a clear role in government. Now we've got the reshuffle. For a Prime Minister who's had, I think it's fair to say, such a bumpy first year in office, what do you think he needs to do today?
Well, I mean, we're seeing some changes already coming in at that mid-level, with Lucy Powell out there as leader of the Commons. But that you could easily swap those people around and no one would notice much difference, unless they had the fortune or misfortune, like Sam Coates and me and you, to be in that sort of bubble of political thought and opinion and news. So I think what he really needs to do is make clear in this reshuffle that there is an exam question. What is it you're trying to do with it? That it doesn't just look like shifting deck chairs because you've had a dreadful day and a dreadful week for Labour. This was supposed to be phase 2, and I know the jokes write themselves, and I can practically predict they'll figure in the next Private Eye and everywhere else. But if this was phase 2, heaven knows what they've got in store for us all in phase 3. That, in a way, not to be unduly cynical, because these are difficult times for governments. They need to address that. What is this reshuffle for? What would change as a result that voters would notice? Not least given the other guy on the stage today, Nigel Farage, absolutely looking like the rock star of the right.
McAvoy there speaking to me a little earlier. Interesting there, she's describing Nigel Farage as the rock star of the right, and he, of course, is in pole position to take any advantage given by the drama of today. And I think that is why Keir Starmer would be one of the reasons that he'll be so determined to move quickly and determinedly to get his reshuffle sorted as quickly as possible and set a different narrative by the end of the day. We can bring in our political editor, Beth Rigby. Beth, you're tapping away, all sorts of things flying around, right?
Yeah, there's all sorts of things flying around, lots of rumours about some potentially big beasts being moved out of office. Lots of gossip around Westminster. What we know for sure, which we broke earlier now being confirmed, is Lucy Powell, the leader of the House, has gone, as has the former Scottish Secretary Ian Murray. We're waiting for some other big moves, but I think it's fair to say that we will see some big changes in Cabinet later today, and I don't quite know who they are yet, but I think there could be one or two very big names in the mix at the moment. It's Friday, and obviously Parliament's not sitting, so a number of MPs, Cabinet Ministers, actually won't be in London, so I imagine some of this will have to be done on the phone, but I also think we will see some people come in up the street. And as I was saying earlier, Number 10 sources are saying, look, this is not the timing the Prime Minister would have wanted. He was planning a reshuffle later in the year, but they've brought that forward. So the timing is not his choice. It's happening because of Angela Rayner leaving government, but he's now using that as a hook, not just to replace. I'm jumpy because there's a gate at the back. There's a gate at the back, and sometimes people pop up, and before you know it, there's a foreign secretary going in there.
We're like flinching every noise. We're kind of poised and ready to go.
Yeah, so, but the timing isn't what he wanted, but they want to do a big reset of government, and this is about, in their words, national renewal. It's about the growth agenda Rachel Reeves is staying, but I wonder whether there will be some quite big changes in policy areas that matter a lot, that they feel they need to deliver on faster. There's lots of rumours around some big names.
I'm being told in my ear that we've just accidentally shown my Haribos on shop.
Oh no!
These are my. This is my fuel. I'll be honest. It's long days.
And mine
They're
too.
long days. We need the sugar to keep us going, basically, here in Downing Street. Who knows how long we're going to be here for, Beth? You were in Birmingham yesterday as well.
You're making me laugh with your Haribos.
I know. It's my body is a temple, obviously.
Of Haribos.
Of Haribos, yeah. We're going to read so much into this reshuffle, though, right? The departments that he thinks aren't working, people who he thinks aren't punching. Does he bring people of the left, of more centrist people in? Does he bring in more new MPs or the new intake? I mean, there's a lot we can learn.
There's a lot we can learn. I think a couple of things might go on. I think there might be areas where he thinks there's a cabinet minister that's done particularly well in their brief and they get a bigger role. And it might be that some of the big beasts of state get moved out. So it might be that, but what I'm hearing, and I don't want, I've got a lot of rumours, but I don't want to start reporting.
I know the rumours. Yeah.
You know the rumours too. I don't want to report names and that be wrong. I don't.
No, we want you to trust us, basically.
Yeah.
If we tell you something, it's 100% double sourced, it's true.
Yes, but the point I'm trying to make is that I think by the end of this day, there will be some really quite big and radical changes in Starmer's government. And look, we started off term and there was a shuffle of personnel behind that door. People that, if you work in Westminster, you know these names, but to you out there watching, you won't know who the Director of Communications is or who the Head of Policy is. These are all the people that work behind the scenes. And in that way, those sorts of reshuffles are interesting to us because they're the people we deal with every day. But I think what this will be a much bigger reshuffle. And actually, to be fair to Starmer, lots of his MPs have been calling for a more radical reshuffle. Yeah. They've been saying the government needs a bigger reset. They've been frustrated at what they think is the timidity of the Starmer operation. And I think actually that's what you're going to get today. And also, in terms of just how you position this, if you do a big reshuffle at this moment that you're planning on doing anyway, it maybe takes a bit of the focus away from Angela Rayner has gone, because it will be Angela Rayner has gone and it will be other big names. So all I'm saying is just, you know, we are sort of waiting for this to kick off, and I don't think we'll be waiting that much longer. Don't turn the television off.
It's all.
I mean, turn it off briefly so Sophy can eat some Haribos, and then we've just got to go to a commercial break from sugar intake. But I think we'll see some big changes. So you know, and also new people coming in because you know, Lucy Powell has left government, Ian Murray, you know, Tamara was talking about Kirsty, who used to be Gordon Brown's advisor. There's also, of course, Douglas Alexander, who was big in the Blair years. He's come back into...
He's done a lot of media rounds.
He was on the media round this morning, not dropping the ball.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're just, you know, we're kind of like meerkats now, waiting to see who comes up the street. But as I said, we think there could be some pretty big changes now.
Beth, thank you.
And movement around the big offices of state.
I'm going to let you do some actual journalism.
Yes, I need to actually go on my phone now.
As Beth was saying, there are an awful lot of rumours flying around about, you know, some of the biggest names in cabinet. Reshuffle days never go exactly as you think they will. Something unexpected pretty much always happens. But what we do know is that this is a far wider reshuffle than Keir Starmer needed to do today. And that tells you that he thinks that there's some things in this government which are not working as they should. And he wants to take this moment to try and seize the narrative and to reset in some ways. Whether or not it will be successful, I guess, depends on where we are in a few hours' time. But let's just go back, shall we, to the story that prompted all of this and the resignation of Angela Rayner. Over the last few days, we've all been speculating in Westminster about whether or not she will go, whether she's going to stay. And look, in the end, she didn't have much of a choice. I want to show you some of that letter that the Prime Minister's ethics advisor, Sir Lawrie Magnus, wrote about the Angela Rayner tax situation. So in the letter, he said, "I believe Ms Rayner has acted with integrity and with a dedicated and exemplary commitment to public service. I consider, however, that her unfortunate failure to settle her SDLT liability at the correct level, coupled with the fact that this was established only following intensive public scrutiny, leads me to advise you that in relation to this matter, she cannot be considered to have met the highest possible standards of proper conduct as envisaged by the Code. Accordingly, it's with deep regret that I must advise you that in these circumstances, I consider the Code to have been breached." That letter there from Sir Laurie Magnus. It's interesting, isn't it? Because in so many ways, he was so firm in his conclusion, but there was that clear note of regret there as well, with deep regret, he said. Let's go back to Beth Rigby at this point. We said that it was going to be an extensive reshuffle.
Yeah, we were talking a bit earlier about some big figures moving around. I think that Yvette Cooper is going to be moved from the Home Office, and I think Yvette Cooper is going to be going to the Foreign Office, and might be that David Lammy is shuffled to another role in Cabinet. And as I understand it, I think Shabana Mahmood, who has been the Justice Secretary, very effective in the prisons crisis. I think Keir Starmer impressed with her. I think she might be moving to Home Secretary. That would mean Lammy potentially moving to Justice. This is not confirmed. This is just what I'm hearing from my sources.
That in itself is so interesting, because we know Yvette Cooper has had a few rows with the Treasury, right, over cuts. She wasn't happy about the settlements with the police. She's been trying to get more money to the Home Office, and Shabana Mahmood has been, I guess, kind of wielding the knife, if you like, in Justice. Do you think we can read much into that?
I don't know yet, Sophie. I mean, all I'm getting at the moment is we've got Cooper going to the Foreign Office, Lammy potentially to Justice, and Shabana Mahmood to the Home Office. And the way I would interpret Shabana Mahmood to the Home Office is that, as you said, she has been effective. It's what I was talking about earlier about Keir Starmer's focus on delivering where he feels a minister has been effective. He feels that she's been effective in the Justice Department, and he's given her a bigger role.
And she took she's taken these very difficult decisions. I mean, we've done on Politics Hub an awful lot on stuff from prisons. You know, she took those decisions to let criminals out early, and there was an awful lot of flack that came with that, but she faced it up, and I guess she almost was doing what she needed to do for the Number 10 project. And of course the Home Office is notoriously one of the most difficult departments to manage because of the bad headlines that it often generates. I wonder if he thinks he needs someone like Shabana Mahmood, who's got a few battle scars on her back, in order to do that.
Yeah, and also look, the Home Office brief is the most politically arresting at the moment. It is a massive problem for the government. The small boats crisis, the hotels, the public unhappiness around that, the unrest around that. And the Prime Minister clearly feels like he needs to have a change at the top of that department in order to try and deliver. To be fair to Yvette Cooper, she has done an awful amount in that space. Right. She has been a minister under the Blair government. She knows what she's doing. She's come in and she's done the one-in, one-out deal. She's worked closely with France. She's looking at the hotel. You know, she's looking at the legal framework. So I don't think anyone could accuse Yvette Cooper of not trying to push the agenda, but it might be that the Prime Minister wants a new pair of eyes and he wants a change. I mean, look, Yvette Cooper is not being demoted in the sense she's going to the Foreign Office.
Yeah, she's not being shunted out of government.
There's 4 big offices of state here. You've got Prime Minister, Chancellor, Foreign Office, Home Office. Interestingly, you'll have 3 women in those roles.
That's true. And also the other thing as well is that I think sometimes, even though there's a lot of kind of grandeur that comes with Foreign Secretary, in the past it's been seen perhaps it's not quite as hands-on, as important to like kind of the machinations of government as some of the other roles. But that's not the case now, because international news is such a big thing. I should say at this point that we have now got it confirmed exactly what Beth said.
Okay, good.
So don't worry, you can
Risky 60 seconds.
Yeah, I know, I love it. Yvette Cooper moving to the Foreign Office, Shabama Mahmood moving to the Home Office. I'm actually going to go get my phone because things are moving so quickly. I feel like we need to be kind of plugged on at this point.
Well, then that looks as well, does David Lammy, who's the current Foreign Secretary, does he end up going to the Justice Department? I am now primed because I expect that, given that what I was hearing has been confirmed, I imagine that we are now going to be seeing some of these politicians into the street and coming into number 10.
And I guess the other big thing that we're going to be looking at is what happens with the deputy role. It was interesting, Beth, I spoke to Andy MacDonald just before this conversation, and he really echoed a lot of what you were saying about people on the left are worried about what he described as a stitch-up. He wants an open contest so that effectively lots of different people can run.
Yeah,
and that's the other thing to watch, isn't it?
Well, that's exactly it. You know, you'll have people on the centre of the party saying what we do not want is to unleash a big internal row about the deputy leadership. We do not want a left firebrand coming into that role and disrupting Keir Starmer in what already are quite difficult times for the Prime Minister. And then there will be people on the left of the party and, you know, in the membership particularly, who say, hang on, we want an open and fair contest. And actually what we would like is a deputy leader that represents our part of the party. So I think you're going to see that. I'm sorry, I'm like a coiled spring now.
The atmosphere,
waiting.
I think it's fair to say, has just changed slightly
yeah,
on Downing Street. It's a little bit more, I don't know.
You don't need Haribos now, do you?
No, I'm sugared up just by the adrenaline.
But
now.
yeah, so I think you're going to see that. And actually, it's interesting because Richard Bergen put out that statement, and then Andy, who is also one of that group of left Labour MPs, coming out saying no stitch-up. So I imagine that what they will want to do is kind of kick that beyond party conference, but you know that's going to be a big internal story in the Labour Party about that contest and how it's managed. I mean, maybe someone like a Louise Haigh, if you think about it, she was the Transport Secretary, she had to stand down from government, and then you know she is now on the backbenches and she is off the left of the party. Maybe someone like that.
Yeah, you can definitely see that. I'm just jumping in because we are now hearing our great team back in the Sky Politics office. Downing Street sources saying David Lammy to justice, which makes sense. It's the kind of triangle now, isn't it, of a jobs little reshuffle between Yvette Cooper going to foreign, replacing David Lammy, who goes to justice, and that, of course, replaces Shabama Mahmood, who Home Secretary. Interesting. So the same faces, but in different jobs.
Yes.
David Lammy was seen to have done pretty well in the Foreign Office, would you say?
Yes.
He worked very hard on those relationships in the United States in particular.
Yeah, I think David Lammy did do well. He worked well with JD Vance. The Prime Minister and he made a big effort, big overtures with JD Vance for Lammy and obviously Trump for the PM. And then during the Iranian crisis, I know that David Lammy was discussing with colleagues and people and leaders and political figures, you know, in Iran. So, yeah, David Lammy, but I think also he did really like being Foreign Secretary, so he might not want to let that brief go. But it's interesting because what Starmer's doing, and this is where we were talking about, you know, be careful of who you let out of the tent. He's shuffling the decks and trying to refresh, but he's not actually removing any really big beasts from the cabinet in the sense of he's moving them around into different roles and important roles, but he's not completely removing them from office. So that is interesting.
It's 4 o'clock. You're watching Sky News. We're live in Downing Street. You've got me and Beth Rigby here to guide you through all of the ups and downs from a dramatic day in Westminster that started off with the resignation of Angela Rayner from her positions in government and also from the deputy leadership as well, after being found to breach the ministerial code. And now Beth is picking up some very, very big movements indeed around that cabinet table. Some of the biggest beasts indeed, the most recognisable faces being moved around. It's really, he's decided to go for it, hasn't he?
Yes, but look at the context in which he's decided to go for it. They've come back this term. He's just lost his Deputy Prime Minister, one of the most powerful figures in the Labour Party and the Labour movement. He is lagging reform. I think the last one I saw was at 12 percentage points in the polls. I can't remember exactly, but, you know, at the moment, reform knocking up to 32% in the polls. Keir Starmer's Labour on 20%. So it has been a torrid first 15 months for the government. There was a reset after the first 100 days where he changed some of the personnel around him, changed his chief of staff, changed his director of communications. And then they had that terrible debacle over the welfare debate and the welfare vote, in which he had to effectively pool attempts to reform welfare to find billions of savings. That just was not a flyer with MPs into the summer, difficult economic outlook, and now he comes back, and, you know, you cannot argue here against this being, whether you think it will work or not, or how MPs react to it. This is a Prime Minister that now is trying a more substantial reshuffle from top to bottom, in the sense of he's not tinkering around with junior ministerial roles, which is kind of how it was billed coming in to the autumn. That was the rumours coming into the autumn, coming into the new term. He's now doing a proper reset of the cabinet table, and he's done that, sorry to keep on, but he's done that with a proper reset of behind the scenes, bringing Darren Jones in to be effectively his what's his name, chief secretary to the Prime Minister. I mean, basically his enforcer.
Yeah.
And then he's bringing in different people into different roles that he hopes will have more success. And I think Home Office is really interesting, because if they do not sort out the small boats problem, they are in such big trouble at the next election. And you only have to see what happened over the summer and how these migrant hotels and the way the public were feeling about it, and the protests outside, how divisive this is, and how noisy this is getting, and it's such a difficult problem to resolve. But I think what you're seeing there is a Prime Minister really trying to put someone into that office, if it, you know, Shabana Mahmood, that he hopes can deliver. She had to deliver on she had to deal with the prisons crisis from the nearly overflowing at the beginning of the term of the party of the Keir Starmer government, when there were the riots in August 2024. She's been dealing with overcapacity in the prison estates. She's done quite a lot of tough reform.
And now,
and now he's going to give her he's going to give her even harder nut to crack.
Yeah, perhaps the most important job in the Keir Starmer government. I don't even think that's necessarily an exaggeration, because, you know, with reform snapping at the heels and all the polling saying that immigration is an increasingly important thing for voters. Beth, I just want to talk to you quickly about the deputy leadership, because this is another big hole to fill. She had her own personal mandate through the members. I've just been forwarded something from a Labour MP saying...
yeah, I've got this as well. Yeah, yes, go on.
Yeah, the party is now going to need to hold a deputy leadership election.
Yes.
The National Executive Committee will meet shortly to agree that timetable. And it's such an important decision, because even though Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner weren't necessarily like natural bedfellows, they had a very effective working relationship and a trust. And if, of course, it is a more left-wing MP who isn't perhaps so, signed up to the Starmer project, that could be a problem for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And the risk will be that it will be an MP from the left of a party membership that feels that Keir Starmer is moving too far to the right or the centre-right. And you saw that with MPs with the welfare votes. He wanted to do this quite tough reform, and in the end he could not take his MPs who did not want to do that with him. And in a way those MPs more accurately reflect perhaps the membership of the party. And then, as you said, someone's saying that the National Executive Committee will meet shortly to agree this timetable and the guidelines. And yes, there will have to be an open contest. It's voted on by members, and this will be definitely seen as, for the left of the party, as an opportunity be to give someone real power and autonomy within the party from their wing of the party. And so that is a headache for Keir Starmer, because although Angela Rayner came from the left of the party, she was signed up to the Starmer project. She helped get Starmer into government. You know, she has driven that project with him. And now she goes to the backbenches, and who is replacing her, and will they work hand in glove with him, or will they just be a big thorn in his side?
It's going to be so interesting, because Angela Rayner, as you say, she came from the left. She's, I think it's no secret to say she's more left-wing than Keir Starmer, but she was quite constructive in her approach. She'd be like writing letters, she'd be talking behind the scenes, she wouldn't be criticising him on the airways, or, she was very loyal publicly as well, right?
Yeah, and that's because she was in cabinet, so there's some cars coming up, so we'll keep our eyes on those. She was in cabinet, and that is cabinet collective responsibility, and she adhered to that. And you could see, because of some of the leaks, that behind the scenes she was privately arguing about taxation. David Lammy, no, it's not David Lammy. Well, someone is getting out of a car, but it could be anyone, so they're checking the car.
There's lots of security, on Downing Street.
But anyway, she adhered to collective cabinet responsibility, and she tried to have those rows in private. So as I said, in the run-up to the spending review, a story leaked to Ben Riley-Smith at the Telegraph was about all of the things she was saying to Rachel Reeves. Instead of cutting welfare benefits, why don't you raise this tax or that tax or this tax? But she didn't do it publicly. She could have done it publicly and caused all sorts of problems. She was trying to do it behind the scenes. So that's just more instability for Starmer. But look, I think if you asked him, the Prime Minister, or people around him, what they would say is that what their focus has to be is delivery. That they understand that the public are sceptical, they are tired of promises made by politicians and a failure to follow through on those. And I think that even despite the disapproval ratings, because his disapproval ratings are high, the scepticism in the polls, there is a view within the government still that if they can deliver on key policies, be that on NHS waiting lists, on growing the economy and helping people with the cost of living, on trying to bring down migration and tackle small boats, that come the next election, they've got a shot at a second term, right? And so that's what this reshuffle will be all about, the delivery. And that's the big question, Sophie. Can they do it, and can they do it in the time frame of the next general election? Because at the moment you can see that there is great public dissatisfaction with the Starmer government in the first 15 months in office.
Beth, I'm going to let you take a breath. We're going to keep, of course, a very keen eye on that side of the street and the little back door that Beth mentioned earlier as well. But I just wanted to recap where we are today, because it has been an absolute roller coaster of a day here in Westminster, beginning, of course, with the resignation of Angela Rayner after she was found to have breached the ministerial code, standing down from her cabinet position and also as deputy leader of the Labour Party. And the reshuffle is underway. It's a big one. We know, of course, Lucy Powell and Ian Murray have left, but now we've heard of a kind of three-way movement with Yvette Cooper leaving her role as Home Secretary, becoming Foreign Secretary. That means David Lammy, previously Foreign Secretary, is going to Justice, and the former Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, now having perhaps one of the most important roles in Keir Starmer's government, Home Secretary. And the reason that Home Secretary is quite so important is because immigration is a thing that voters are increasingly saying is a huge issue for them, one of the top issues for so many voters, and it's something that in number 10, I can tell you that privately and publicly, to be fair, they are very, very worried about indeed. They've got reform snapping at the heels on the right as well. And Nigel Farage, of course, has been in Birmingham today. It's his party's conference, Reform UK's conference. He's been doing his big speech, and he's also been reacting to that resignation of Angela Rayner. Here's what you have to say.
You simply can't get away, can you, from being the Housing Secretary and avoiding £40,000 of council tax. And it screams to entitlement. It screams to a government that, despite all the promises that this would be a new, different kind of politics, is as bad, if not worse, than the one that went before.
Nigel Farage there, who actually moved his speech forward by several hours in order to kind of maximise the political impact of it, given the events going on down here in Westminster today, which I think it gives you a bit of a sense about the professionalism of Reform's media operation. It certainly has got much more slick in recent years. The Conservative leader, Keir Starmer, has also been reacting to Angela Rayner's resignation. This is what she had to say.
That is the right decision. It should have happened a long time ago. It shouldn't have taken the Conservative Party continually raising this issue, as we did throughout the summer, pointing out all sorts of issues with the story she'd been telling, where she was living, why she was on the electoral roll at a property she said wasn't her main residence. We have been on this issue from day one because we think it is really important that lawmakers shouldn't be lawbreakers, but also the Housing Secretary should be able to have her housing issues in order. If they're going to be putting property taxes on the rest of us, then they need to come clean about their own affairs.
Keir Starmer reacting there. One person who has been actually quite sympathetic to Angela Rayner this week is the Liberal Democrat leader, Sir Ed Davey. Earlier on, before, of course, that report from Sir Magnus, he said that he did have a lot of sympathy for her position as a fellow parent of a disabled child and the need to try and set up a trust to make sure that they had security throughout the whole of their life. This is how he reacted to her resignation today.
It's clear Angela Rayner's position was no longer tenable. I just hope the government can now move on to help the millions of people in our country who are having a tough time. The cost of living is hitting so many people. Carers and our healthcare system, they need more support. So once we've got this out of the way, please can we focus on what people need, on cost of living and on health. I always said that if the ethics advisor said she'd broken the rules, she had to go and that her position would become untenable, as it appears to have done. My sympathy was with her as a parent of a disabled child. I'm a parent of a disabled child, and there are hundreds of thousands out there, and we think about what would happen when we die, when we're gone. But you still have to abide by all the rules, particularly when you're Deputy Prime Minister and a senior politician. And if she's broken the rules, as it appears she has, she had to go.
Well, joining us now is the former Labour MP and Minister Caroline Flint. Caroline, it's good to speak to you. We spoke, of course, yesterday on the Politics Hub. It really does show what a difference 24 hours can make. And look, you called it right, I guess. You kind of said that you had a lot of sympathy for Angela Rayner, but if there was any flicker of impropriety or rule breach in the report, then her position would be untenable. What's your reaction to her resignation?
Well, I think it's, as we discussed last night, Sophie, in carrying out a very rapid, but it seems thorough investigations, Sir Magnus has said that basically that Angela didn't follow up on the advice to seek further special advice, and to that end, she has been found in breach of the ministerial code. I think also just to acknowledge as well something else in Sir Laurie's letter, which was about Angela's commitment to public service and her values essentially are really positive, and I don't think that can be taken away from Angela. But I think, unfortunately, we've had 8 days of this being on the front pages, and because of that failure to follow up with specialist advice on her tax affairs, which did show that she owed money, she had to go. I think for Keir Starmer, as we can see, as where you are in Downing Street with Beth, I heard you say that you didn't need any sugar because there's so much energy in the air. Keir Starmer was always going to probably have a reshuffle. It's come in a way that he probably didn't expect. But I think it's quite interesting, some of the moves he's already made. And I think Shabana Mahmood is a good choice for Home Secretary, with Yvette taking on that big role of Foreign and Commonwealth Secretary.
I'm keen to unpick that a bit more with you, because look, I feel like the Home Office is an area that you're very familiar with when your time in Westminster, of course, as a minister, but also as a constituency MP, and immigration being brought up by so many of your constituents as well. What do you make of the choice to put Shabana in that role?
I think as Justice Secretary, from my personal point of view, has proved to be really effective, but also she's got an innate instinct in this area about values and what is right and what is wrong, which I think chimes with where the public are on so many of the issues that face both the Justice brief but also the Home Office brief. People, for example, on immigration, it's not about the British public being against all migration into this country. I think they understand our needs in that area, and they also recognise the huge contribution many migrants have made to our life here in the UK. She, as a person herself and her family background, understands that only too well. But I think Shabana is a very common sense sort of person, and that speaks to the British public. When the system isn't working, when it is found to be, lacking in any common sense or sense of why this is happening, why we don't know who's in our country, why we can't deport them when it's clear they've failed their asylum application, I think Shabana has a sort of innate sense of values and common sense that she can bring to this role. And I think she's shown that as the Justice Secretary.
I'm going to jump in, Caroline, because I think we are getting a movement here in Downing Street, but always good to talk to you. I should say as well that Downing Street sources are also telling us that David Lammy, who's just, of course, been moved to Justice Secretary from Foreign Secretary, will also be the Deputy Prime Minister. It does look like, of course, that leadership contest is still going to take place, but David Lammy is going to be the Deputy Prime Minister as well. So interesting to see how that unfolds. I want to bring Beth Rigby back in. We're expecting imminent arrivals now. Things are really moving quickly. What do you make of this news that David Lammy is like to be Deputy Prime Minister?
I mean, look, David Lammy's been moved out of the Foreign Office, so he's been moved out of one of the four great offices of state. But with that moving out to Justice, he has also been given the Deputy Prime Minister role. So that is, in a way, not a demotion for David Lammy. And so, as I was saying earlier, I think what this is quite an elegant attempt by Keir Starmer to switch around people to potentially get more effectiveness in the Home Office without demoting Yvette Cooper and without demoting David Lammy. So actually, when you think about it in those terms, each of those people, Shabana Mahmood, it's a straight promotion. David Lammy's now Deputy Prime Minister, and I think David Lammy also, with Keir Starmer, as you were saying, he did a lot of work with the US. And actually, I'm remembering now as well when J.D. Vance was over in the Cotswolds and I was not in the country. But,
fishing trip,
they were fishing and, he hosted them at his Grace and Favour home. And so, David Lammy might not be in the Foreign Office, but as Deputy Prime Minister, he's still got that kind of diplomatic and role that he... Also, I think the thing about David Lammy that people perhaps don't or misunderstand a bit is he's pretty close to Keir Starmer. I mean, they are London MPs, they're in constituencies next door, and they've actually been quite close for a long time. So it doesn't actually surprise me. I mean, lots of people always were talking about, oh, David Lammy will get moved out, at some point. But actually, if anything, Keir Starmer is kind of giving him the Deputy Prime Ministerial role.
It's interesting as well because Angela Rayner, of course, had these, very working class roots and a challenging upbringing, being a young mum. And David Lammy, I remember him once taking me to the Tottenham estate where he grew up as well. So it's all, he has got this hinterland that not everyone in Westminster does have as well, this understanding.
He grew up in Tottenham. He went to the local primary school there. I interviewed him in that primary. Maybe you did too. And he's got a backstory which is someone that has risen up from, a very, very ordinary background and faced adversity and become, one of the top politicians in this country. So it's interesting. I mean, the other thing we don't know is who else is coming into Cabinet, given that Lucy Powell and Ian Murray, two Cabinet ministers, are leaving. But there's I think also, like, when the dust settles on all of this, and everyone sort of takes stock, because this was not expected today. And actually, when I got here earlier today in Downing Street, just for a bit of colour, and I know, when Westminster knows something big is happening, this place is packed, and there was hardly anyone here. There was me.
Early, I love it.
No, but there was no one here
Never miss
because
a
it was.
trick.
But the point is, that it's not a humble brag. What I'm trying to say is, no one expected this today. We kind of had a sense that the report could be coming, not least because of what the Prime Minister said yesterday about it would be swift. And then before you know it, you're now in a full cabinet reshuffle. So there's an element of surprise in this. That people didn't expect Keir Starmer to do this. People say he's ponderous and he's too managerial and he doesn't take big decisions and boom, he's done the opposite. He's doing a big reset of the cabinet. Yes, he's doing it under duress because he's had to do that with Angela Rayner, but at least it's an attempt by him to do that reset he keeps talking about.
Just to play devil's advocate here, if he is trying to do a reset and do a big move and to get to grips with these really poor poll ratings, let's be frank, is just kind of reshuffling people around the right thing to do? Because they're familiar faces, right?
Well, yes, but if you think of it another way, where are the big problems for the government? It's the Home Office and migration, and it's the economy, He has taken a decision, and lots of people disagree with him, that the Rachel Reeves-Starmer project is a joint project. The growth project, the decade of renewal, is a joint project. Lots of people think that's wrong. Lots of people think, so I'm getting a bit because people are moving around.
People are pointing.
We think people are coming up the back.
And it's the back door. This is interesting.
Lots
it's not the,
and often that's the foreign
office route.
Foreign office route. But lots of people think, he should have moved. He's taken a decision not to do that. And in fact, actually, some of the personnel changes at the beginning of the week, people were talking about it. People were talking about it undermining Reeves, but actually another former cabinet minister made the point to me that the Prime Minister's chief private secretary, that's his kind of most senior official, is actually someone from the Treasury. And actually, like the Treasury would be cock-a-hoop that they're bringing their people into number 10, right?
That's a very good point. If Dominic Cummings did it, we say it was a plot.
Yes, but the point is that, so Reeves is staying put. And then at the Home Office, that's the other big problem for them. He's trying to put in someone that he thinks can affect change. Foreign policy, he does it really anyway, doesn't he? He spends, I've spent most of my life on a plane trying to keep up with him and failing. But, he does it anyway. And Yvette Cooper, she can have that role. It's not a demotion for her. She's a really senior, powerful woman in his party. So, you could say it's moving the deck chairs around, and you can interpret it like that, but you can interpret it another way.
And as you say, I think the Shabama Home Office move is a big one.
And also, Sophie, as I said, he's got enough problems without kicking out more big beasts and putting them on the back bench or giving them demotions in which they either say, no, I don't want that, I'm going to the back benches. So he's done it in a way where he's moved people around, but I guess he's sort of keeping them loyal. And for now, the way Angela Rayner has left government, the way that he has spoken of her as she's left, he will be hoping that she will be a supportive force. But think how influential she was. Who was the person that went in to negotiate with Rebel MPs about the welfare bill? It was Angela Rayner. It was Angela Rayner that was taken in, and maybe it might be that she can help him a bit on the back benches. That is a big unknown. The photographers are coming out now.
It all feels very, I think febrile is probably
We
the
need a
word.
roving camera so we can take you all around
just
the
to try and kind of describe. We've got kind of the block of cameras who are kind of darting one way and another way. As soon as there's any movement at any entrance, you've got the police who are up and down, and there are a couple of photographers who've come out the door at number 11 as well, which perhaps does indicate that something is imminent.
Something's
right?
imminent, I think. There's lots of activity at the back gate.
There's lots of activity.
I'm
not sure if I should risk a throw to tomorrow. I think I might do, but I might.
we might seize back
tomorrow. I'm going to throw to you, Tamara Cohen, who's been looking through some screens on the big reshuffle. But I have to warn you that me and Beth might have to seize the mic back if there is any movement. So apologies in advance if that does happen tomorrow.
Well, we're going to take you back to where this all started just a few short hours ago with the advice the Prime Minister received about Angela Rayner's tax affairs. This is the letter from Sir Laurie Magnus, who wrote to the Prime Minister, and we saw that letter this morning. And he said that Angela Rayner had provided her full cooperation and assistance with his inquiry. He looked at all the relevant documentation about the purchase of a flat, and that had given rise to her understanding that he held in good faith that a lower rate of stamp duty was applicable when purchasing the property in Hove. But he said that having sold her share in the family home in Ashton in Greater Manchester, yes, she did not own that property anymore, but in certain circumstances, he said, where a property is held by a trust, and in this case it was a trust of that person under the age of 18, the rules are different. So he goes on to say, particularly in the context of the specialist type of trust, those rules can be complex, but these are his conclusions. Although she was open about the existence of the trust and received advice that she didn't have to pay the high rate of stamp duty, she was told to consult an expert tax advisor and did not do so. So he says if such expert tax advice had been received, as it later was, it would likely have advised her that a higher rate of stamp duty was payable. So he goes on to conclude that while he's no doubt she was motivated in her management of the property by a desire to act in the best interests of her children and with the intention to pay all appropriate taxes, unfortunately, he concludes that she has actually breached the ministerial code. And we can go to the next bit of his report now, where he says she cannot be considered to have met the highest possible standards of proper conduct. So Angela Rayner then wrote back to the Prime Minister to confirm her resignation, and she wrote to him that she appreciated his warm support that he'd given her. She said that she regrets her decision not to take that specialist tax advice and says it was never my intention to do anything other than pay the right amount. She also talks about the significant toll that the pressure of this is taking on her family. She says, I rightly expect to be proper scrutiny on me and my life, but my family did not choose to have their private lives interrogated and exposed so publicly. She says the strain she is putting her children under through staying in post has become unbearable. She says, given the findings and the impact on her family, she's decided to resign from all her roles as Deputy Prime Minister and Deputy Leader of the Labour Party and Deputy and Housing Secretary, from a teenage mum on a council estate in Stockport to serve in the highest office, she says it's a great honour. She thanks him for his leadership and friendship, and says that she will continue to support the party in the weeks and months ahead. Probably an indication for Number 10 that for now she's not going to cause them too much trouble from the backbenchers. Keir Starmer then wrote a handwritten letter to Angela Rayner, quite unusual to write a handwritten letter, saying that he's very sad that she is leaving all her positions in the Labour Party. He says it was the right decision, although it is painful, and he says that she's helped to make the Labour government a success and make Britain fairer for working families. He signs off like this. I think we could just see this next bit. He says he says you won't be part of the government, you will remain a major figure in our party. Is that a hint there that at some point she may make a comeback?
Tamara, thank you very much indeed. Tamara Cohen there running through some of the minutiae of that resignation by Angela Rayner, but it is all go here on Downing Street. Me and Beth are poised.
I'm like, we're waiting, we're just waiting for the back gate, aren't we, Sophie?
A pair of meerkats, like basically waiting to see.
You're taller than me, so you're going to have an advantage in there.
I'll shout if I can see anything, because it has turned into quite a wide-ranging reshuffle. Some of the most familiar faces and, of course, some of those most important roles. And I think we are about to see one of the new appointees. If you've been given a job, then you get to do the Downing Street catwalk, if you like, the Walk of Pride down Downing Street in front of all the cameras. And I believe that we are about to see some of them now. Although I'm now being told by some of our colleagues that it may be that he's David Lammy's snuck in the back. Beth, these are they're always chaotic, these reshuffle days. You think you know what's going on, and then there's always a curveball or something. Lots of people staring down the gate of Downing Street with slightly bemused expressions, I'm not going to lie, but it feels like David Lammy has actually gone round.
There's all this commotion behind us as everyone's trying to work out where has David Lammy gone. I think he might be coming round. It might be that he walks up the street rather than
walk, probably.
Round the back.
Yeah. There we go. But David Lammy is interesting, isn't it? Because he was a Foreign Secretary, of course, one of the grandest roles in government, and an important role as well, particularly at the minute. He's done an awful lot of wooing stateside. You've got the war in the Middle East, of course, to juggle too. But we believe, don't we, that he is moving to justice and also becoming the deputy leader.
Deputy leader. So yes, David Lammy moves to justice and is the deputy leader. Yvette Cooper moves to the Foreign Office, replacing David Lammy, and Shabana Mahmood at Justice has a massive promotion. And I should say as well, Sophie, I think that is the first time ever that 3 of the offices of state, the big offices, the big 4 as they call it, PM, Foreign Office, Home Office, Treasury, have been held by women. So that is actually quite a big historical moment. That hasn't happened before, I don't think. If it has, someone correct me, please.
Harriet Harman's going to be
Harriet
on the phone
will be on
again.
my phone. She'll know as well. Harriet will know. But yeah, so David Lammy, and I think for all of them that means that they don't feel it's a demotion. The thing that's most interesting about this, though, of course, is that given that Keir Starmer, as I said, is handling a lot of foreign policy himself, is the Home Office. Because I think it's an admission that despite Yvette Cooper's progress, and they're trying to sort of talk about the fact they are making progress on the small boats crisis. They have put in measures and put in the one in, one out plan and pilot with France. That they made the point last week that whilst there's still huge numbers of people crossing, the number of boats is actually going down. It's just that the traffickers, the people traffickers, are putting more people onto less boats because they're trying to disrupt the flow of the dinghies. But of course that comes with its own dangers, and then of course the migrant hotels and the dislocation that's causing in local communities and the unhappiness it's causing in some local communities. So she has one hell of a job, and I would say that and the economy are clearly the 2 biggest challenges for this government. Wes Streeting is managing to drive those waiting lists down. He's got such a generous settlement, hasn't he, from the Chancellor for the NHS. And so really what you're seeing here is Keir Starmer taking the misfortune he's had, as he would see it, of losing his Deputy Prime Minister. And what he's trying to do is really reset his team to signal that he is serious about trying to get this government on track and get it delivering. So in a way, you could see this as a far more bolder move than perhaps you and I thought this morning. I wasn't expecting a massive reshuffle of the cabinet, and so in a way Keir Starmer, I think, will have surprised both his cabinet and his government.
I think that's right.
And his colleagues on the backbenches as well.
Can we talk a little bit more about Shabana Mahmood as well? Because look, you've identified the fact that she's got, perhaps the most important job in government other than Rachel Reeves. We all know the situation with reform snapping at Labour's heels. Why do you think he's chosen her for this job?
Well, as I said, I think she's really impressed him. I think she's impressed him as Justice Secretary. I have to say I'm getting mixed reports from some of the MPs about her potentially going into the Home Office, but he's impressed her as Justice Secretary, and he wants to give her a bigger role, and he thinks that she will be effective in reform. She's big on reform, isn't she?
And I also, because I've had a bit of contact with her through doing filming in prisons and going to a few press conferences around, that those very difficult decisions to let prisoners out early. And the thing that I felt about her, I don't know what you think, Beth, is that she was willing to go out there and make the argument and make a difficult argument and try and justify it and be quite bold in the way she kind of confronted some of the criticism, which perhaps is what he thinks needs to be done. And it's no slight on Yvette Cooper, but in the Home Office.
Yeah, and I think Yvette Cooper is obviously a capable minister. She's been in government before. She kind of gets things done, but maybe that's what he wants. Maybe he wants someone to better communicate what the government's done, because I think there's some frustration within Number 10 that they're getting constantly smashed up. by Nigel Farage on the matter of small boats and the government's failures over it, and they're all hopeless. And actually, they have a story to tell about some of the things that they are doing in migration. Legal migration is certainly coming down quite swiftly. And it might be that, yes, he wants someone that he thinks might better make the argument and take reform on. Like, Yvette is, you know, for all her skills, she's quite a cautious.
Yeah, she is.
And I don't mean that, but she's a.
No, you want a cautious.
She's been around a long time. You know, she's got the scars on her back. She's quite a cautious communicator, and it might be he just wants something different in that role.
I'm just going to jump in because PA are reporting that Pat McFadden
here we go,
is going to take over a
super
ministry, including the Department for Worker Pensions and the skills remit of the Department for Education. What do you make of that?
Well, what do I make of that? I mean, that's...
I love it. Direct reaction.
I mean, Pat McFadden is at the Cabinet Office. As I was saying, he's effectively like a number two to the Prime Minister. Cars are coming up.
Cars as well.
Which is why I was saying earlier, maybe he makes Pat McFadden... Again, Pat McFadden hasn't been given a big office of state, but he's been given a broader brief. And so, again, it's someone he trusts, that he's given a bigger role. He's taken a bit of stuff there from Bridget Philpson, though, hasn't he?
We are also seeing some movement, some doors are opening on some cars. And
David Lammy.
David Lammy. I'm going to duck down. If you can see on TV, if you can point this way, and then I'm going to...
Mr. Lammy, are you happy to be Deputy Prime Minister, sir?
David Lammy.
Are you pleased to be Deputy Prime Minister, sir?
David Lammy, happy with the move?
David Lammy there. A little smile on his face. He looked pretty happy, didn't he? A little twinkle in his eye as he went into number 10. He didn't respond to you. I guess that's no surprise. But interesting that he's the first person we see going in there. Perhaps, again, to try and make sure that this is not a demotion for David Lammy.
Yeah, and he was beaming there.
Yeah,
he was happy. He's obviously happy to be Deputy Prime Minister. Look, just on the Pat McFadden, though, I mean, looking at that as well, I mean, the obvious questions, if there's a super ministry with work and pensions in, what does that mean for Liz Kendall, the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, and the skills remit moving from the Department from Education into Pat McFadden's super ministry? What does that mean for Bridget Philpson? She remains Education Secretary potentially, but she's had a big part of her brief potentially taken away. So that's interesting. And again, it speaks to, Sophie, what we were talking about delivery earlier, which is Keir Starmer trying to shift control around the cabinet in order to try and drive through what he wants. And Pat McFadden works extremely closely with Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer. It's like a triumvirate at the top of government. Pat McFadden, Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer, they sit in a room, they take decisions about whether or not to scrap the winter fuel allowance, for example. But I wonder what that means for Liz Kendall, and that's unclear.
The other thing I was just thinking about this too, from the policy perspective, it's quite interesting, because what you're doing is you're taking work and pensions, i.e. benefits, in with skills and Department of Education, which makes me think immediately about work and about equipping people to get jobs who are on benefits at the minute.
And I've just got some inside information from someone who knows the thinking around this, and they're saying that Mr. McFadden is taking over this new super ministry formed from DWP, which suggests to me that Liz Kendall is perhaps moving to a different role in cabinet. Maybe she's moving to maybe she's moving to one of those jobs where someone else has been let go. So maybe Liz Kendall is moving in cabinet, but Pat is taking over the new super ministry formed from DWP, and the skills bit of the Department of Education, it will be focused on growth.
I love that we get the same text messages. I feel like people are watching us and then texting us, which is exactly how it should be, Beth.
So that's this super ministry, and it will take in... so I wonder whether actually that means Pat McFadden's also moving from Cabinet Office, and that's another vacancy there. So what we're seeing is this is a really big reshuffle.
It's huge. Yeah. And also it makes you think as well, because of course with the sort of more internal moves before, with Darren Jones going on to be an advisor, there was a few pieces speculating that was this demotion for Pat McFadden. Well, it seems that he's got different ideas for Pat McFadden. He's still going to be right at the centre of the government, and it's really important.
And as I was saying, it's a ministry about growth. fits in with Rachel Reeves in the Treasury. So it's kind of, in a way, what you're seeing is Keir Starmer moving what he sees are his key operators into areas where he hopes that they can turbocharge the project, because at the moment I think it is fair to say, and I don't think anyone in Downing Street would particularly argue with me about this, that things are not going well, that they haven't caught the public imagination, that the growth strategy hasn't really begun firing, that the small boats crisis has not been fixed. You know, so there's so many that people's standards of living are not really improving. People are not feeling better off under this Labour government. They've got a huge problem with huge unemployment and long-term sickness, that they tried to grasp the nettle on that and then had to bottle it because they couldn't bring the MPs on board. And I think what you're seeing here is Keir Starmer, who we always talk of as he's very managerial and he's very ponderous and he's very process-driven, he's kind of going for it, right?
It's so interesting as well, like just kind of thinking more and more about how, as you said, we would never have predicted this at the beginning of the day, and yet it is not just a couple of people being moved around the chessboard. This is a full-blooded reshuffle. Departments are changing. He must have been planning this. I know he didn't plan this for today, but this must be the embodiment of a lot of thought, right?
Yeah, and it's really interesting because, as we were talking about earlier, at the beginning of term when we were all coming back for back-to-school vibes on the 4th, or was it the 1st? I can't remember.
I think it was the first, actually.
I think
it's been a long couple of weeks
I rolled
already.
in on the 4th. No, no, but seriously, there was, you know, it was there's going to be a giant reshuffle, and then there's a mini reshuffle, and then there isn't a reshuffle, and it's reshuffle of staff, and everyone's like, what are they doing? They need a big reset. But what sources were telling me in number 10 was the Prime Minister was planning an autumn reshuffle and he's brought it forward. And that suggests to me that a lot of thinking went over in the summer about what do they need to do. Look, they are a year and a bit into office. There will be another general election in what, 2.5 years? 3.5 years.
2027, according to Nigel Farage.
Nigel Farage thinks it's 2027, but the point is they are running out of time. It has not been a particularly successful first year, and he's really trying to, I think, put the turbochargers under. And just going back to kind of where we started the day with Angela Rayner leaving, you see too, don't you, how this shifts the narrative a bit. So the focus comes on the reshuffle of his top team, the new super ministries, and a bit away from Angela Rayner and probably headlines that they don't want. So I think this is like it's a radical reshuffle and a big reset of a Starmer government. And I think many of his MPs, regardless of what they feel about the personnel changes, will at least recognise that the Prime Minister, who they've been calling out to be more radical, is at least trying to reset the top team and to deliver on those priorities that he set out in the run-up to the general election.
And particularly we can see, you know, at the Home Office around immigration, and then potentially, of course, with these changes to the Department for Work and Pensions on benefits as well. Goodness, it feels like such a long day already. So much has happened. I feel like it is perhaps worth, you know, as we await the kind of next arrivals, worth kind of going back to what started at all the kind of Angela Rayner move. You obviously spent quite a lot of time with her this week. You know, you were there for that very emotional interview that she did. She's taken it quite hard, it seems. I mean, understandably, of course.
Yeah, and also I should say about that interview that I only had sight of her statement a few minutes before the interview was due to take place. So I didn't go into the room necessarily thinking that she was going to admit that she had underpaid her stamp duty and offer an explanation as to why she made the mistake. I wasn't expecting that necessarily. I thought she might mount a defence of, actually, the tax advice is correct and the reporting in the media is incorrect, and it was a very different interview. And the point of all of it was, it's a Deputy Prime Minister who has got to that office. She's won a deputy leadership contest as well. And she was fighting for her political life there. She clearly didn't want to stand down. She didn't feel that she acknowledged she'd done something wrong, but she insisted it was not in bad faith, that she had made a mistake, that she always wanted to do things correctly. And I think what you saw in that interview was someone really laying it all on the line and really opening up and being very honest in a way that we always say, why can't politicians be a bit more honest, right?
Exactly.
We're often critical for politicians for obfuscating and not really telling us what they think. But she didn't do that. But the reason she didn't do that was because there was nowhere else for her to go. Her options were she had to resign at that point, or she had to try and explain it and see if the paper evidence would back up her position. And then what we found out today was that while the ethics advisor, Laurie Magnus, acknowledged that she had acted in good faith and with integrity and honesty, as he put it, his words, that she had failed to get the correct advice, that she had not met the highest standards of office, that the error had only come about because of media reporting on it, and that he said, with regret, looking at the evidence, I understand your reasons, but you have broken the ministerial code, and there's nowhere for the Prime Minister to go after that. He was just the one in all of this. So if you know when there's loads of unknowns, and we as political journalists will stand around talking about this and that and what it could and couldn't be, and pontificating. The one thing I was really personally clear about, knowing a bit about Keir Starmer and how he operates, and I've seen him operate, was that if she has found to break the ministerial code, he would not try. That was it for her. So actually, for all the speculation around it, could she survive, couldn't she survive, really it was beyond her control, and in a way it was beyond his control. And maybe that's why, even though she clearly was so devastated to have to stand down, and he clearly very unhappy, that they've made peace with it, because in a way it was beyond both of their control. Because it was decided by the ethics advisor, and the Prime Minister was not going to. He cannot criticise Boris Johnson in the way he did about holding on to Priti Patel in his cabinet when she was found to have broken the ministerial code. Do you remember that a few years ago? And Boris Johnson kept on, and Keir Starmer was spitting tacks about it. He can't do that and then try and hold on to Angela Rayner. She would have known it, he would have known it, the team would have known it. She had to go.
I remember, me and you on this very street when he was doing his first speech, before going into Downing Street, and he made such a big play of the standards as well. And like you say, it does really come back to that as well. Beth, thank you very much. Don't go too far, because we'll be back in 1 second. We could have someone else any moment. But in the meantime, as we await our next arrivals, we can speak to Dale Vince, the Labour donor and founder of Ecotricity. Dale, I should just warn you before we start that if I do have to very rudely interrupt you, it's because we're getting movement on a very busy day here in Downing Street. But look, we've got a big reshuffle. What do you make of the move so far?
Oh, it's really interesting. I've been sat in your studio actually watching the screens, listening to the changes, and I think it's impressive. It's impressed me. I think it's bold, and like any good football manager, I would say Keir Starmer is adapting his team to deal with the game that they're in now.
You say to deal with the game they're in now. What kind of game is that? How do you think it's changed?
Well, we've got economic circumstances that obviously they didn't know the full extent of on entering government just over a year ago. We've got the rise of reform. There are all kinds of things that have happened in the world, Trump, tariffs, all of that kind of stuff. And so the team that started out in government just over a year ago, is perhaps not the best team, or the people aren't in the best places. I mean, this happens in football. You shuffle your players around to deal with what you're facing. I think that's what he's doing. It looks very good to me.
You, of course, have got a long-standing interest in the environment and green issues. We have no idea on the extent of this reshuffle, whether Ed Miliband's staying put, whether there's going to be any changes there at all. How important do you think it is personally that Keir Starmer keeps prioritising that department and protects Ed Miliband, who, let's face it, has rubbed up a few people the wrong way along the journey?
I'm not aware of Ed Miliband rubbing a few people up the wrong way. I think the right-wing media make much of Ed Miliband's net zero plan, as they like to call it, and shutting down North Sea and stuff like that. None of that is warranted. I think Ed Miliband understands the issues, and he's, in my opinion, the right person for the job. But if Keir Starmer chooses somebody else, I don't mind, as long as we get somebody that can do the job. And it's super important for the government and for our country that we keep pursuing the green economy, because that's where the big economic opportunities are.
One of the biggest moves we've seen so far is Shabana Mahmood to the Home Office. It feels to me like, reading between the lines, that's a focus on immigration. They know that Reform are snapping on their heels and overtaking them, of course, in the polling. Do you think it is right for Keir Starmer to be prioritising the small boats as an issue in the way he has? Have you always been comfortable with the language and the policies he's pursued there?
I think the problem is this is one of the circumstances that the government faces, is there's an over-focus of the right-wing media on small boat crossings, which are just 4% of total immigration into our country every year. There's an over-focus, and this is actually a legacy issue.
Just to come in, if I may, I know you want to make the point about the right-wing media. I understand why you want to do that. But Keir Starmer talks about small boats an awful lot as well, right? That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, sorry. The point I'm trying to make is he really can't avoid doing this because the right-wing media makes so much of immigration. Nigel Farage makes so much of immigration, and it's a legacy problem from the last several Tory administrations. But particularly, it's a legacy of Brexit. If you look at the graph of immigration, it doubled immediately after Brexit. We're at roughly 1 million, or we were at the general election, and Labour's big job is to get that down. But it's not the problem, as in they didn't create it, but it is the problem to deal with.
What do you make of the departure of Angela Rayner? I'm not sure if you knew her sort of personally, or what do you make of her as a politician?
I think it's a shame. I think it's a loss for the party. I think it's a loss for the country. I think she doesn't have a tax-dodging bone in her body. I think she asked the question twice about her tax affairs, and I think any one of us, having got the same answer twice, might conclude they'd tried hard enough. So Laurie said today she should have asked a third time, should have gone to a higher level. She's been to a barrister. That's the very highest level. Most of us wouldn't imagine going that far. And the complexities of the trust arrangement for her son have basically tripped her up. The irony is, once her son turns 18, she'd be due a refund had she paid the higher rate of tax anyway. I don't think she was trying to tax dodge.
At the same time, though, she says she asked the question twice, which she did, of course, but, in the response she was given, they said that they weren't qualified to give the tax advice and she should speak to an expert, right?
Yeah, I think one of them suggested she speak to an expert, and then the second one recommended it, and she overlooked that. That's her mistake, and she paid a very heavy price for it.
Do you think she should have paid that price, or do you think she should have stayed?
No, I think it's absolutely right. So Keir Starmer came into government, he set up this ethics advisor, he was determined not to have the scandals of the previous Tory administrations, and he's living by his word. I think what has happened is correct. I think it's unfortunate, but there it is.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Dale Vince speaking to us there, the Labour donor, founder of Ecotricity. Right, well, you join us on a very, very busy day here in Downing Street. There's been movement already. We know that David Lammy has gone in to see the Prime Minister. He, of course, has been moved from his position of Foreign Secretary to become Justice Secretary and also Deputy Leader. Shabana Mahmood is the new Home Secretary, and Yvette Cooper is now the new Foreign Secretary as well. Well, our political editor, Beth Rigby, is here with us. All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's all a go-go. I mean, it really is moving around. I get impartial pieces of information, but not full information. There's some rumours that Liz Kendall, obviously Department of Work and Pensions, goes to Pat McFadden. It might be, and I haven't got this confirmed, this is speculation, that she is moving to the Department of Industry and Trade, and Johnny Reynolds is moving somewhere else. But I haven't got confirmation of that. And if Johnny Reynolds is moving, I don't know what department he is moving to, but I assume that he will be staying in Cabinet because he has been an effective and very loyal minister. Yeah. And also we're hearing that Steve Reed is moving potentially to housing. So this is a full-on reshuffle here. Lots of people moving around. What do we know? David Lammy, Deputy Prime Minister, moving to Justice. We expect Shabana Mahmood to move to Home. Yvette Cooper, Home Secretary, moves to Foreign Secretary. Pat McFadden has got the new super Ministry of Department of Work and Pensions and some of the skills department as well. And has he got communities in there? I can't. Anyway,
I can't remember. Anyway, that's just too much.
That's kind of a big growth ministry. Liz Kendall is moving from DWP but moving somewhere else in Cabinet. Could it be the Department of Industry and Trade? Johnny Reynolds is moving, a question as to where he is moving. And Steve Reed, currently in Environment, I think, he is expected to be moving to housing. And that's all I've got, and I don't know where everyone's moving to.
I feel like I need to go and have a lie down.
You can't, you're on television.
No, I know.
Have a Haribo.
I might go up to get another one. I have to say I've got enough sugar to get me through. It feels like more people are moving than are staying in their jobs at the minute.
Yeah, but look, this is really, honestly, I was not expecting such a big reshuffle today. And as I was saying this morning in the street, it was quite quiet. We were expecting that there would be a verdict on Angela Rayner, but we were not expecting that Keir Starmer was completely changing around his cabinet. And this is a real reset moment for a government. When the day ends and you're having a G&T at the end of it, Sophie.
Don't tell them my secrets.
With me in our pyjamas. No, but when the day ends, in all seriousness, when the day ends and everyone looks back on this, they're going to be like, wow, this was the moment that you could have seen this day as the moment that a really powerful person in the government was knocked out. And Keir Starmer was in real peril. And what they're doing is they're trying to shift the narrative and turn it into something quite different, which is, this is the predicament I'm in. I wasn't expecting this reshuffle, but I'm taking it as an opportunity to reset my team, reset this government, and try and grasp the nettle for great. I think the Pat McFadden thing's really interesting.
I agree.
Because they need to do the welfare reform. When that vote collapsed, no one in cabinet, in government, was saying, "Oh, we're just going to ignore welfare reform." So there's a determination here to try and drive this stuff through.
They've got to get the spending cuts through, where the ones that they want, and they need growth because that unlocks everything. Beth, I'm interested in you talking there about shifting the narrative, which of course makes an awful lot of sense on a really difficult day with what's happened with Angela Rayner. Do you think this is also a reflection of, I guess, the difficulty that this Keir Starmer administration has found itself in as well?
I mean, to be honest, I came back to Westminster and there were a few events where MPs were meeting Welcome Back, and it was so gloomy. I mean, there were some publicly very loyal MPs saying to me about Keir Starmer privately, God, he's got to get a grip. There's no plans to try and move him or make a move on him, but can we really go on like this? We can't go into another election like this. What's Keir Starmer going to do? He's not showing leadership, and they're like their heads in hands. You know, when he did the mini reshuffle of personnel, everyone was joking. It's like you're moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic. Well, this is the answer. I mean, whatever you think about the government and whatever you think about the policies, what you see now is a Prime Minister, and this is the art of surprise, that he's surprised everyone. People think, as I said, that he is process-driven, he's ponderous, he doesn't take decisions, he takes decisions by committee, and he's actually showing in this that he is determined to try to get a grip and change Downing Street in a way, and his cabinet in a way that he thinks he can deliver. That, I think, is the objective. Whether he manages it, I mean, that's a whole, you know, that's what you and I are going to be talking about for the next 3 years. But that is, and look, this is a kind of, but also Nigel Farage is on stage at the Reform Conference today, making a big speech. It was meant to be his weekend. We'd all travelled up to Birmingham. I was meant to be covering his speech today. And Keir Starmer's just completely knocked him and Reform off the airwaves, having had a summer in which Nigel Farage and Reform have made all the running on small boats and hammered the government, right? And so, in a way, this is a Prime Minister taking back the megaphone.
It's interesting, it really is. Beth, thank you. You are just joining us just before 5 o'clock, because it is a big day here in Westminster. So I should say it is now 5 o'clock. Good evening from Downing Street, where the Prime Minister is working on a major reshuffle of his cabinet. It was triggered by the resignation of his deputy, Angela Rayner, after Sir Keir Starmer's ethics advisor found she'd breached the ministerial code when she failed to pay enough stamp duty on her second home. Well, Sir Laurie Magnus found she'd acted with integrity, but should have sought more tax advice. Well, earlier, Nigel Farage brought forward his speech to the annual Reform UK conference to react to the news, declaring that the government is in crisis. Well, I just want to bring you some of the main headlines from the reshuffle so far, because it has been pretty extensive. Angela Rayner has resigned as Deputy Prime Minister. The former Home Secretary, Beth Cooper, becomes the new Foreign Secretary, and that means she is replaced by the current Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. And David Lammy moves from the Foreign Office to become the new Justice Secretary. He'll also replace Angela Rayner as Deputy Prime Minister. Pat McFadden is expected to take over a new super ministry, which includes the Department for Work and Pensions and the skills room at the Department for Education. But Lucy Powell, who had been serving as the leader of the House of Commons, has been sacked, while the Scotland Secretary, Ian Murray, has also left the government. So I think what you see here is, even though it may be interpreted in some ways as familiar faces moving around different roles, there are a few things that you can really point out here. Shabana Mahmood, the Home Office, that's a clear focus that Keir Starmer wants to have on immigration, a difficult topic, of course, for him. And then, of course, the move for Pat McFadden, also very, very interesting. Someone who he really trusts to try and, I guess, get a grip of benefits and also growth. Beth, Rigby, our political editor.
I've got a bit more now. I think I said Johnny Reynolds is moving from the Department of Trade. I think it might be that Liz Kendall is going to the Science Department and Peter Kyle is going to Trade. I haven't confirmed that, but that's the movement around, and I'm not sure where Johnny Reynolds is going to land up. I think he is remaining in Cabinet and is, I think, pleased with the new role. But I think it might be that Peter Kyle is maybe stepping into Trade. But as I said, I have not got that confirmed. It's fair to say that, you know, they're all staying, but they're shuffling around.
It's the extent of the changes, I think, that is really quite something today. Look, we've had reshuffles before, you know, I've covered them before, you know, big beasts move around a lot, but it's quite rare you get a reshuffle with this extent of people moving, right?
Yes, it is, and I'm beginning to wonder about some of the moves as well, and it might be too that what Keir Starmer's trying to do, you know, he's been quite frustrated with the communication of government. And you might have noticed as well that a lot of the announcements of government and the performance, it all goes through Keir Starmer, so every announce Keir Starmer. And I can sort of see in this, he's also moving in people that he thinks potentially are good communicators, like you know, Johnny Reynolds is pretty, you know, pretty safe pair of hands, but you know, like Peter Kyle, he's quite a punchy communicator.
And it's punchy, isn't it? Because I remember how he took on Nigel Farage.
Yes, exactly.
Over the child safety stuff.
Yes, and then they got into a big battle about it.
A bit of a spat.
And Peter Kyle did not stand down, and some MPs said to me afterwards that they liked that. That they liked that Peter Kyle was taking the fight. So yes, so that would make sense to me that Liz Kendall goes to the Science and Innovation brief. Peter Kyle moves to the Business Department effectively. And also makes sense because he's been working on AI and artificial intelligence, which is keenly clawed to business. I think we have another arrival coming. And then where does Johnny Reynolds go? That is still unknown.
I mean, who knows? I mean,
if anyone wants to message me with that information,
if you are Johnny Reynolds, then you know our phones are here. Because he's well liked, isn't he?
Also, every time I think of Johnny Reynolds now, I actually think of Sunderland. Because he's a massive Sunderland supporter. And thinking that he must be quite pleased with their Premier League performance so far, which is a complete swerve away from this, which I probably shouldn't have done.
I know, I love it.
But that's what I think of when I think of Johnny Reynolds at the moment.
So what you're saying that at least if he gets sacked, Sunderland are still in the Premier League? Is that the conclusion?
I don't think he's going to get sacked. Shabana Mahmood is coming up the street.
She's walking up the street right now. The woman who, it is fair to say, has had a big promotion, but now has one of the most difficult jobs in government, tackling immigration, working, of course, for the Home Office as Home Secretary.
Shabana Mahmood, can you solve the small boats crisis? Are you pleased to be Home Secretary? Are you pleased at the promotion?
The door closes and she goes inside. That is a massive job for Shabana Mahmood. I think it is fair to say that she is viewed in Number 10 as someone who has really made some difficult, tough decisions in her previous role in the Ministry of Justice, letting out prisoners early. No one wants to do that when they're in government, right? But she went out there, she forcefully made the argument, and now she's been rewarded with another very difficult job.
Very difficult job, very big job. And, you know, there will be many people in the Labour Party on the benches and in Number 10 that are fully cognisant of the fact that if they cannot solve the small boats crisis, or at least show progress, or at least take the political heat out of that they are going to have a big problem at the next general election, because you have seen it in recent weeks. Reform are running on this story. They are amplifying this story about the migrant hotels, the failure of government to stop these boats. I mean, they are at record highs, I think, now this year, Sophie. I haven't looked at the latest numbers, but, you know, this is a huge, huge problem. And Keir Starmer said at the beginning he was going to smash the gangs. They've been working tirelessly with the Europeans. Chancellor Merz coming over at the end of last term, as was President Macron of France, to talk about disrupting the supply chains of the boats and disrupting the criminal gangs, and now the one in, one out scheme, so that people come here illegal on boats, they're returned to France, and in return France will send someone with an asylum claim that the UK thinks is acceptable to here, to this country. All of that, and then you have Nigel Farage saying, I'm going to spend 10 billion over X amount of years to deport 600,000 people. And Labour really have to fight on this, because it matters to a big chunk of voters that are voters that they are targeting. And so Shabana Mahmood, Keir Starmer's clearly thought, Yvette Cooper's done a lot of the groundwork, but I really need someone else to take a look at this. And maybe, as we were talking about, communicating in a way. So, yeah, I mean, I think for me so far, that one is a really key appointment, along with the Pat McFadden appointment, because the Pat McFadden sort of super growth industry, tackling unemployment, tackling the welfare bill. Simply, if the government does not try and tackle the welfare bill, you know, the argument Liz Kendall was making, the former Work and Pension Secretary, is that that you lose public support for the welfare state, because the bill is growing to such an extent that it's not affordable and sustainable if you want to do all the other things in public services. So again, this is not a kind of nice to have. These reforms are a must have, and also it feeds back into growth, because if you have people who are unemployed and on sickness benefit, it's not helping you grow the economy. So you can see how the government it's really tilting towards that growth agenda, and also kind of focus on small boats.
Yeah, and Beth, it's been great to have you with us, you know, getting ahead of all those lines and giving us the analysis as well. I'm going to let you take a quick breath, probably go and get a drink, have some Haribo if you need it, and I'm sure we'll be speaking to you later. Wow, I mean, it has been quite the move so far, as Beth has been outlining. An awful lot of people have been moving their jobs. We've got Shabana Mahmood in Number 10 behind us, who, of course, is the new Home Secretary, perhaps with the most difficult job in government, although I guess Rachel Rees might have something to say about that. We've also seen David Lammy, who's moved from the Foreign Office to become the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, and also the Justice Secretary as well. And this, of course, has all been prompted by the resignation of Angela Rayner, a resignation, frankly, that Keir Starmer didn't want to happen, didn't want to see. But, of course, when she was found to have broken the ministerial code, really, both of them, both he and Angela Rayner herself, had no choice but to see her leave the government. Now, we've seen copies of the letters exchanged between Angela Rayner and Sir Keir Starmer today, as well as a letter to the Prime Minister from Sir Laurie Magnus. Our political correspondent, Tamara Cohen, can bring us some of those details.
Well, Sophie, this all started just a few short hours ago, and it started with the verdict of the Prime Minister's advisor on standards, Sir Laurie Magnus, on Angela Rayner's tax affairs, and this is what he said. He started off by saying he'd got Angela Rayner's full cooperation and assistance in his very quick inquiry. He said he'd reviewed all the documentation about the purchase of her flat, including the legal advice she received at the time, and that she believed in good faith that the lower rate of stamp duty was applicable when purchasing the property in Hove. However, she had sold 25% of her family home in Greater Manchester. She did not own that property, but under the relevant legislation that she should have known about, a person who does not own a property can still be deemed to hold an interest in it if certain circumstances apply, and these include where the property is held by a trust and the beneficiary of the trust is a child of that person under the age of 18, which is Angela Rayner's disabled son. Particularly in the context of that specialist kind of trust, he acknowledges this is complex, but here are his conclusions. She was open about the existence of the trust. She believed in good faith that she didn't have to pay the higher rate, and she was told that by the lawyer, but she was also told to get specialist tax advice, and she didn't do that. If such tax advice had been received, it's likely they would have advised her that the higher rate was applicable. He then goes on to say that he's no doubt that she was motivated in the management of her affairs by a desire to act in the best interest of her children and with the intention to pay all appropriate taxes. However, her unfortunate failure to settle her stamp duty liability at the correct level and the fact this was only established following intensive public scrutiny leads me to advise you in relation to this matter that she cannot be considered to have met the highest possible standards and the code has been breached. So Angela Rayner then resigned, and we can bring you her resignation letter to Keir Starmer. She starts off by saying this: I deeply regret my decision not to seek additional tax advice, given both my position as Housing Secretary and my complex family arrangements. She says, I take full responsibility for this error and would like to take this opportunity, she says, to repeat it was never my intention to do anything other than pay the right amount. But she goes on to say this: while she expects media scrutiny, she says, my family did not choose to have their private lives interrogated and exposed so publicly. And while protecting her children is her priority, the strain I am putting them under, she said, has become unbearable, factoring that into her decision. She goes on to say that for a teenage mum from a council estate in Stockport to serve at the highest level of government has been the honour of her life. She will, though, be resigning from all three of her positions, leaving that vacancy as Deputy Prime Minister. Carrying on from there, she says, thank you for your leadership and your friendship. I will continue to serve you, our country and the party and movement I love in the months and weeks ahead, suggesting she won't be causing Keir Starmer too many troubles from the backbenches so far. This is his letter back to her, and it is handwritten, which is very unusual, shows a warmth between them. He says, I'm very sad that your time as Deputy Prime Minister has come to an end in this way. He then goes on to say, talk about everything she's achieved. She said it's very painful for you. You've given your all to making the Labour government as a success and make Britain fairer for working families. And he concludes like this. He says, she's made the right decision, but even though you won't be part of the government, he says, you will remain a major figure in our party. Is that a hint from Keir Starmer of a possible comeback at some point for Angela Rayner?
Tamara, thank you very much indeed. Tamara Cohen, there, our political correspondent, taking us through all of the details of the story that kicked everything off, because we are having a pretty extraordinary day, I think it's fair to say, here in Downing Street. No one this morning would have predicted a reshuffle of this size, but we've got a new Home Secretary, we've got a new Foreign Secretary, we've got a new Justice Secretary. Luckily, here with us to take us through all the details is our Chief Political Correspondent, John Craig. It feels like there's more people who've moved jobs than are in the same jobs.
There's only, yes, that's right. There's only two who've left the government so far. That's Lucy Powell, perhaps unfairly. And as she pointed out in her letter, she's midway through this great modernisation project in Parliament, changing lots of rules about MPs' second jobs, all that sort of stuff. And the Scotland Secretary, Ian Murray, who's fired off a really angry letter. I mean, he would claim, look, I've taken the fight to the SNP in Scotland Scotland, and this is my reward. And what is unusual about this reshuffle is that the people we've seen coming up the street, David Lammy, talk about grinning like a Cheshire cat.
Happy, wasn't he?
He can stay buddies with his old mate J.D. Vance now. And Shabana Mahmood, they already know what jobs they've got. Normally when we stand here on reshuffle day, you get ministers coming up, we don't know what job they've got, and they often go, they don't know what job they're getting either. They're sometimes kept waiting, aren't they?
And then we know the text is going to come when they're in there.
When a minister says to the Prime Minister, I'm not doing that job, it holds everything up.
Yeah.
But it's different, this one here. But, I mean, just going through David Lammy, first of all, just going through the list of what we know so far. Now, is David Lammy, now he is the Deputy Prime Minister, is he number 10's preferred candidate to become Deputy Leader of the Labour Party?
Interesting.
Now, I would say, I was looking at who stood last time, people like Rosanna Allen Khan, Ian Murray, who's just been sacked, Richard Bergen, I think he'll stand again probably as the left's candidate, and who else stood? I've forgotten the fourth, there was another one.
What about Dawn Butler?
Dawn Butler, yes, so she might stand again, although she's been talking about standing for Mayor of London. So anyway, that's Deputy Prime Minister. I mean, I wondered actually when we knew that Angela Rayner was going to go. I mean, sometimes when a Deputy Prime Minister goes, the Prime Minister of the day doesn't actually appoint a successor. I mean, over the years, some people have said it's a non-job. I mean, you think back to some of the people. I mean, there's been some giants have had the job.
Yeah.
I mean, Attlee, I looked it up. Attlee, I did look it up.
Very impressive, I love it.
Attlee is the only deputy leader of the Labour Party who went on to become leader and then Prime Minister.
Well, it's quite a good example, I guess.
Yeah, but he's the only one.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been people like George Brown, who was better known for his drinking than his political achievements. And Aaron Bevan had it briefly until his death. And then more recently, of course, we've had John Prescott and who was a model for Angela Rayner, she told us many, many times. And the Tories had, well, Willie Whitelaw. That famous quote of Margaret Thatcher. You don't mind me saying this, do you? Every Prime Minister needs a Willie. It's a famous Thatcher quote. And then, of course, in the coalition, we had Nick Clegg did the job. And Michael Heseltine under John Major. So that is all very interesting. And the election for Deputy Leader is going to be really tasty, isn't it? Because
it really is,
be a left-right fight again, a bit like Ben Healy back in when was it? 81, wasn't it? Before you were born.
Only just, but I'll take it.
Shabana Mahmood, problem solved. Obviously thought to have done a good job at justice. And my goodness, is she inheriting some problems at the Home Office. I mean, this is a vote of no confidence in many ways in Yvette Cooper's handling of the small boat crisis and so on. Yvette Cooper becomes Foreign Secretary. I can't recall her ever having a foreign portfolio before. She's done Treasury and work and pensions and jobs like that, and I could go on, but there's so many.
Oh, it's extraordinary, isn't it? As you say, it is such a wide-ranging reshuffle. Me and John are poised here on Downing Street. We've got an eye in all the doors from all the angles to try and come to you as soon as there are any movements. Which I don't think there is in a minute, but we will go to there. In the meantime, though, the Reform UK conference has been going on, and of course this is really the backdrop for the reshuffle today. No surprises with Nigel Farage nipping at his heels. Keir Starmer decides to prioritise a new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, his Mrs. Fix-It, if you like, to try and tackle the small boats crisis. And Nigel Farage himself brought his speech forward at the party conference in Birmingham in order to respond to the resignation of Angela Rayner. Our political correspondent Rob Powell is in Birmingham for us. Rob, how's everything going down in Birmingham?
Yeah, they changed the timings around at the last minute, Soph, to bring Nigel Farage's speech forward. He is actually on the stage again at the moment, though, and there has just been a bit of argy-bargy in the hall. Some protesters, I think, made it into the hall and were then dragged out. I think we can have a little watch of those pictures that have literally just happened in the last 5 or 10 minutes or so.
Just ignore them. Just ignore them. Boring! 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 Well, I don't know. She looked like she'd been on the sauce.
Well, there you go. The traditional Nigel Farage response. I think I remember him shouting boring at me when I asked him a question during the general election campaign last year. I'm not sure exactly what Nigel Farage was doing back on stage. His speech was brought forward by 3 hours a little earlier because of that news about Angela Rayner resigning. Essentially, I think it's really Reform trying to capitalise on the chaos, kind of grab the attention, put their man front and centre, but also sort of stitch together that breaking news into basically one of the main themes of their conference, not just their conference, their party more generally, really, that the two main parties are done and that they need to be swept away and something else needs to be put in place. And really the Angela Rayner resignation and the row over the stamp duty payment or lack thereof really does play into that, because they're able to point at it and go, look, it's exactly like the people that came before. And that was exactly what Nigel Farage did when he was on the stage a little earlier. We can get a flavour of what he said here.
Thank you very much indeed. Rob Powell speaking there, and of course we heard from Nigel Farage as well. Everything is very, very boring for Nigel Farage, as you can tell. His favourite way of dealing with any hecklers, which always goes down well, I'm sure, with the party faithful. He's been up in Birmingham, of course, setting out his pitch, but things really moving an awful lot here in the in Downing Street. I've just got an email through or a message through from Number 10 saying the cabinet reshuffle has now been complete. Right, I'm actually just going to read this to you because there's so many appointments. I think it's just worth taking a breath and running through them all. So Number 10 Downing Street confirming David Lammy, Lord Chancellor, Secretary of State for Justice, will also be Deputy Prime Minister. He went in there absolutely beaming earlier. Darren Jones, we know, is Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, remaining Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. Yvette Cooper moves to the Foreign Office. Shabama Mahmood, who we also saw going through the doors of Number 10, she is the new Home Secretary. So Steve Reid gets Housing, Communities and Local Government. Pat McFadden, this is a really interesting one. He's gone, of course, to that beefed-up role, Secretary of State for Business and Trade and President of the Board of Trade, which means Liz Kendall moves to Secretary of State for Science. Emma Reynolds, we can now confirm, is the new Secretary of State for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. So a promotion there for Emma Reynolds. Douglas Alexander, who of course is a veteran of those Blair Brown years. He is the new Secretary of State for Scotland. So he's taken Ian Murray's job. It's an interesting move. He was doing increasing media, I should say. So someone who has come back full of ambitions, returning to Westminster as well. Johnny Reynolds, we've been wondering where Johnny Reynolds has gone, and we can now confirm Parliamentary Secretary to the Treasury, a member of the Cabinet, and Sir Alan Campbell, Lord President of the Council, Leader of the House of Commons. That is the old Lucy Powell job. Peter Kyle, we understand, has gone to the Department for Business. Well, it is a huge reshuffle. Familiar faces, I think that's my main takeaway. It's not been one of those reshuffles where you see completely new people appointed or bumped up several ranks. These are people we're all quite familiar with, either they were in the Cabinet before or they've been in Westminster for a long time. But my goodness, it's extensive. A lot of people moving around. John, what's your takeaway?
On that point, the only jump and big promotion really is Emma Reynolds. She moves to Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. My goodness, that's a tough gig for for her, because of course she's got the furious farmers angry about the inheritance tax proposals. She's also got the problem of the water industry and the near bankrupt Thames Water. What is she going to do about that? She is what we call in the trade a retread. She was MP for a seat in Wolverhampton, lost that, came back when late and won High Wycombe. And she's been at the Treasury, and it's a good promotion for her. Relatively untested. She's not exactly a veteran, even though she's been in the House before. Interesting. Johnny Reynolds, Chief Whip. That's an odd one, isn't it?
It is an interesting one.
Alan Campbell, of course, becomes Leader of the Commons. Alan Campbell has been a strict disciplinarian since he became Chief Whip, especially since the election. I remember him saying to me when he suspended some of the MPs, "Oh, we're in government now." And so he, as Chief Whip, he was very intolerant of dissent and suspended quite a few MPs. So he now gets the job of taking through all those modernisation proposals, changing the rules in Parliament. Another retread is Douglas Alexander, who was MP for Paisley, got beaten by that SNP firebrand, Mari Black.
Yeah.
Remember her? No longer in the
Yeah.
House in Paisley South, I think it was. He's back in the House as MP for East Lothian. Who's this coming?
This is Darren Jones.
Darren Jones, yeah.
Who is, of course, he's got his promotion last week, kind of whisper in chief, if you like, to the Prime Minister, going through the doors of number 10 now.
How's the reset going? How's phase 2 going?
Little smile.
Yeah, well, we already know about his move, of course. That was announced on Monday. I suppose he's one of the winners, isn't he? I mean, it's been seen very much as the number 10 and the Prime Minister asserting more of a grip on economic policy. I mean, it's interesting, one of the first things we were told today was that there's no move for the Chancellor. She's staying where she is.
One of my favourite things that's happened today is the fact that we have started to be live fact-checked by MPs live on air, or ex-MPs. So we had Harriet Harman fact-checking Beth earlier. And I have to say, Jonathan Ashworth has just texted me fact-checking you.
What's he said?
So, you said that Yvette Cooper has no background in foreign affairs. He's fact-checked you live to say that she was apparently Ed Miliband's first shadow foreign secretary, which I forgot.
Right? I forgot about that.
I totally forgot
so
about that.
So that would have been 2010, would it?
But there you go. Any other fact-checking from former MPs or current MPs, we're here for it.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'd forgotten.
I'd forgotten as well. Hands up.
How long did she do the job for?
I don't know. I'll have to ask him.
Good to know that Jonathan Ashworth's listening to us.
Yeah, exactly. This is
I
what
don't
we like.
recall it being a memorable period of Yvette Cooper's career. I remember standing here when she was appointed to various cabinet posts. First of all, Tony Blair, then Gordon Brown. I remember when she got the job of work and pensions. But her background is in economics. I think I'm right in saying, wasn't she an economics leader on the FT or something like that?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So that's a bit of a strange one.
So we've had 3 people going in. We've got David Lammy, we've got Shabama Mahmood, and we've got Darren Jones. Is that a reflection of their importance to number 10?
Well, I think it's a reflection, probably, that the Prime Minister sees the people he's promoted more high-profile jobs as having done a good job over the past. I'm just looking at Steve Reed. I mean, he's got housing, communities and local government. He's got that big brief that Angela Rayner had, house building and everything else. So it's a good move for him. He'll be relieved, I would have thought, doesn't have to deal with Thames Water anymore. Peter Kyle, that's a promotion for him. I mean, I've always seen Peter Kyle as a bit of a rising star. He didn't come into the House until I think it was 2015. He won a seat from the Tories, Hove, where Angela Rayner's flat is.
Don't mention Hove.
And he's now got a majority of 12,000 there. And he's a good campaigner. I remember the Nadine Dorris's by-election in Mid-Beds. He turned a 25,000 Tory majority into a Labour win. So he's got an impressive record.
Yeah.
Liz Kendall goes to science. Has she been a success at work and pensions? Jury's out on that one, I think. But as I say,
she didn't get it through, did she? I mean, that's the.
I'm very surprised about Johnny Reynolds because he's been such a big presence on our television screens, radio, performing, and so on. Is he going to be a chief whip who talks to the media? I mean, I'm going back a few years. Donald Dewar used to do that.
It's true, isn't it? It's hard
to imagine. It's a weird one, that, isn't it?
I thought the whole point of chief whips is that they don't talk to the media.
And I would say, I hope he doesn't mind, Alan Campbell, Sir Alan, Leader of the Commons, becoming quite a great survivor, I would say.
I think he'll allow you that one, John, I reckon. I really reckon. Today was started with the resignation of Angela Rayner, right? Which is, by all accounts, a nightmare for Keir Starmer. It's something he didn't want to see happen. It's front page news. It's been very, very difficult. Is this partly an attempt to kind of reset after that difficult start?
It looks like it. We know that the Prime Minister has been thinking about I always thought the PM would have a reshuffle after about a year. It's what Tony Blair did in '97. And he's clearly been thinking for a few weeks about, I should move so-and-so here and so-and-so there. But he's obviously thought, right, I've got to make changes because Angela Rayner's going. And incidentally, the killer blow, I think, was that statement from this conveyancing firm yesterday. That's what really did for her, following on from her tearful interview with Beth. And then that firm came out and contradicted what she said. And clearly, he's obviously thought, well, there's no point in having reshuffles every 5 minutes. Might as well do it all in one go. And, of course, there's the added bonus, of course, of being able to scupper Nigel Farage and Reform.
He's going to be happy about that, isn't he?
Yes.
Probably. Yeah. I can imagine. Nigel Farage, of course, moving the time of his speech to try and get something calling in and get some kind of credit for it, but always difficult. John, thank you very much indeed. John Craig there, our Chief Political Correspondent. Well, the reshuffle's over, and my goodness, it has been an extensive one. I think it's fair to say that this needs to be a reset moment for Keir Starmer. It's been a difficult year. We've seen that reflected in the polls. We've seen that in, for example, the number of small boat crossings, and we've seen that with the economy as well, and the lack of growth in particular. The key to this will be whether or not he can reverse some of those issues in the years ahead before that next general election. Well, lots to discuss. Our next guest is Ben Bradshaw, the former Labour Culture Secretary. Ben, you've been, I guess it's fair to say, a reshuffle veteran. What do you make of this one?
I think I'm very pleased it's comprehensive. It's what I hoped Keir would do. I think he needed to do this after a year, not just to reward some of those rising stars like Peter Kyle and Shabana Mahmood, who I think will be warmly welcomed by Labour MPs in the Home Office, but also to move those Secretaries of State and others who perhaps weren't the right fit for their departments after a year somewhere where he thought they could do a better job. And I would expect there to be a substantial reshuffle of the lower ministerial ranks in the days to come.
It's interesting, isn't it? You picked out there Shabana Mahmood, and for me, that is one of those standout appointments from today, perhaps the most significant one. Do you think it's fair to say that Labour hasn't got a grip on immigration so far?
I don't think that's fair. I think Beth has made significant progress. If you look at the increased number of returns, the huge increase in the number of the processing of asylum cases, of course, the small boats issue remains a live one, but that's going to take time. And Yvette, to be fair to her, has put a lot of work into that. We've passed legislation. We're in the process of passing more legislation. But I think what Shabana brings to this, she's been incredibly effective taking on a real mess at the Department of Justice. You remember the problem she had with overcrowding prisons. She's got away with that very successfully. She's also instituted radical reform. She's got on with the job. She's a human dynamo. She's very tough. She's very tenacious. And I think she is a fantastic fit for Home Secretary. And I suspect she will build on the work that Yvette has done and accelerate it.
Yeah, I have to say, I kind of came into contact with Shabana Mahmood a little bit when we were doing our prisons coverage at Sky News as well. And I mean, you don't get a harder brief than letting prisoners out of jail early, and she certainly faced it full on. I guess my other question to you is, this has been written up as a reset and viewed through the lens of this being like a big moment for this government. But most of the faces are the same, right? He's kind of just reshuffling them around. The people he's brought back are people that we've known before, like Douglas Alexander, like Emma Reynolds, who, of course, lost her seat previously, and now she's back. It's not really that new or revolutionary, you could argue.
No, well, I think there have been one or two departures from the Cabinet. I mean, let's be clear about that. I think Keir said when he first came in, if you remember, and I think this is right, that he didn't want to be a Prime Minister who moved Secretaries of State and the Cabinet around too much. I mean, I think we had a little bit too much of that under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, if you don't mind my saying so. I think you need to leave people in their jobs if they're doing a good job. But if they're competent cabinet ministers, but perhaps would be a better fit elsewhere, I think it makes sense for them to move them sideways. But let's wait and see what happens in the middle and lower ministerial ranks before we reach a defined judgment on this reshuffle. And of course, the reshuffle would have happened anyway. It's not just because of Angela Rayner. In fact, it probably would have happened sooner and may have been delayed by a day or two because of the Angela Rayner saga. I think this was always planned, and I'm really pleased that it's far-reaching and radical. And I think Keir will feel he's got the right people in the top jobs now, and they can get on and deliver, because that's what this government will be judged on, whether it delivers, whether the outcomes of its policies help people, whether the public services are better and people are feeling better off at the next election, not about the day-to-day ups and downs of individual ministers.
And I absolutely know what you mean in the point that you make there about the ups and downs of individual ministers, but it would be remiss of me not to ask you about Angela Rayner, because she's been a force in this administration. She's someone who I think it's fair to say has been a voice from the left, a voice for the working classes around that cabinet table and in the ear of number 10 in the Treasury. What do you think is going to be the impact of her resignation?
I think she's a real loss to the government, and I think if you read Keir Starmer's letter, it expressed genuine sadness. Look, she made a mistake. She wasn't diligent enough. my advice to all of the ministers who are being moved around today, and in fact every single member of Parliament, is please spend a bit of money on a tax accountant. It's a few £100 a year, but I can assure them and promise them it's a very, very good investment. I mean, if you're in public life, and particularly if you're under as much scrutiny as Angela is, then you need to be absolutely super careful, and she wasn't in this case, and she's paid a very heavy price. I hope she has some kind of future in politics. I'm sure she'll be a very loyal supporter of the government on the backbenches. You say she came from the left, she did, but she's been very loyal and a very effective deputy to Keir, almost like yin and yang, like John Prescott was to Tony Blair, and I think he'll miss that. But I hope the Labour Party, in its wisdom, elects somebody equally as good who can fulfil that role just as well.
Let me pick you up on that last point there, because this has been a day that Keir Starmer has been in control of, right? He can decide who to move into what jobs. The deputy leadership election is not that. It's something decided by the members. What are you hoping for? Because I have to say, I've already spoken to some MPs on the left of the party who would like someone from the left, right? A potential thorn in the side of a government that they see as too centrist. What are you hoping for?
I think the Labour Party needs to be very careful. We're in government. We're responsible for taking decisions. I think if the public saw the Labour Party turning in on itself and having endless internal debates about ideology and policy, that would be the death knell of this government, to be honest. I hope that the membership understands that when you're in government, you need a leader who, yes, can provide a balance to the Prime Minister in lots of useful ways, but who's not going to rock the boat and is not going to indulge in constant public arguments. And indeed, I think that's impossible to have in government. And I'm sure as the weeks and months go ahead, I don't know what the procedure for this is going to be, but I'd be very worried if this ended up in a sort of internal political debate within the Labour Party when we're in government and we've got so many difficult decisions and big challenges to face. We need to get on with governing, delivering what was in our manifesto, not having internal arguments about where the direction of the party and the direction of the government.
Now, you say that would be the death knell of the party. What do you mean? Do you mean at the next election? What do you mean by that?
Well, the public don't take kindly to parties in government. I mean, we saw this under the last Conservative government. They don't take kindly to parties in government that are not united, that don't have a common purpose and are not all going in the same direction. So I think a deputy leadership campaign that exposed or accentuated those differences, I don't think would be helpful. That's my personal view. I think Labour Party members are more sensible than that, but let's see what happens. I'm confident that in the current circumstances, people realise that we need a government that pulls together and delivers for the country and for the Labour Party.
Ben Bradshaw there. It's always good to talk to you and get your perspective.
Thanks, Sophie.
Thank you so much for coming on the programme. Ben Bradshaw there speaking to us. We are broadcasting today from Downing Street because it has been a pretty extensive reshuffle, I should say. Almost all, I mean, maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but the majority of people around the cabinet table are going to be sitting in different seats and they're going to be reporting to different departments. And it's a reflection of the reset that Keir Starmer feels he needs to do at this stage in his premiership. Well, Angela Rayner's resignation today was following an exclusive interview with the former Deputy Prime Minister and our political editor, Beth Rigby. Let's have a listen to what Angela Rayner had to say when she was asked if her position in government was untenable.
Well, I'm hoping people can, now I can set the record straight, and I've given those personal information that people can see what's happened and can see that I wasn't trying to dodge tax or any of the accusations that were pushed onto me, that I relied on advice from lawyers. That advice from lawyers was inaccurate, and as soon as I was made aware of that from the leading tax expert who we asked to look at this, I am now taking all of the steps that anyone in those circumstances who rely on advice and that advice is wrong, I'm taking the steps to correct that. So hopefully people can see that there isn't any intention to deceive, to avoid, to be hypocritical in the way in which I've conducted myself.
There you go. That was Angela Rayner, of course, speaking to Beth Rigby. What started as a very difficult day with her resignation and, of course, the opposition are, of course, making the most of that news today. This is what the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, had to say on social media earlier. Angela Rayner is finally gone. But it's only because of Keir Starmer's weakness that she wasn't sacked 3 days ago. Britain deserves better. Well, she then posted this video along with the message.
If she has resigned, that is the right decision. It should have happened a long time ago. It shouldn't have taken the Conservative Party continually raising this issue, as we did throughout the summer, pointing out all sorts of issues with the story she'd been telling, where she was living, why she was on the electoral roll at a property she said wasn't her main residence. We have been on this issue from day one because we think it is really important that lawmakers shouldn't be lawbreakers, but also the Housing Secretary should be able to have her housing issues in order. If they're going to be putting property taxes on the rest of us, then they need to come clean about their own affairs.
Well, one of the people who's perhaps been more sympathetic to the situation that the deputy leader of the Labour Party, Angela Rayner, was in, was the Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey. This is what he had to say today after seeing that report.
It's clear Angela Rayner's position was no longer tenable. I just hope the government can now move on to help the millions of people in our country who are having a tough time. The cost of living is hitting so many people. Carers and our healthcare system, they need more support. So once we've got this out of the way, please can we focus on what people need, on cost of living and on health. I always said that if the ethics advisor said she'd broken the rules, she had to go and that her position would become untenable, as it appears to have done. My sympathy was with her as a parent of a disabled child. I'm a parent of a disabled child, and there are hundreds of thousands out there, and we think about what would happen when we die, when we're gone. But you still have to abide by all the rules, particularly when you're Deputy Prime Minister and a senior politician. And if she's broken the rules, as it appears she has, she had to go.
Well, it's been a very, very wide-ranging reshuffle, as we've been discussing from the street all of today. And as David Lammy leaves the role of Foreign Secretary, a big question is what is it going to mean for the so-called special relationship between the UK and the US? Because Mr Lammy appeared to have developed his own pretty special relationship with the Vice President, J.D. Vance. Well, to get more on this, we can talk to our US correspondent, James Matthews, who joins us now from Washington. James, I'm really interested to talk to you on this because we've got Yvette Cooper, who, let's not pretend, she is a veteran, she's a safe pair of hands. But David Lammy was seen to have made some real inroads with the Trump team. What do you make of the moves?
Yeah, surprising, I think, from a US perspective, particularly when there is so much stake on personal relationships, when political philosophy between the UK and the United States is so far apart, and it is, between Downing Street and the White House right now. It did all seem to be going extremely well between Lammy and the man who's vice president and who might well be the next president of the United States, J.D. Vance. I mean, the two of them fishing together on J.D. Vance's recent trip to the United Kingdom. David Lammy quoted talking about his relationship with J.D. Vance and actually, Angela Rayner, talking about how that trio, they shared a working class background as politicians, dysfunctional childhoods. They bonded around those the kind of shared experiences, and that seemed to be developing as a trio at the heart of the special relationship, so-called, and that was cause for encouragement, I think. So, why the change? Well, it will be a question being asked in the White House when they have stopped Googling Yvette Cooper, because she's not somebody who has appeared, veteran though she is, not somebody who's appeared on the foreign radar. She spent 3 months as Shadow Foreign Secretary around 2010. She did work for, wait for it, Bill Clinton when he was a Democrat president wannabe in 1992. She might want to keep that quiet, but a hugely challenging brief when, as I say, there is so much distance, a distance which has been successfully straddled by Sir Keir Starmer, of course, but he's certainly given Yvette Cooper something of a hospital pass. How she plays it is hugely significant at a time of rapid change and that wide gap between the UK and the US on all the big ticket items, Ukraine, Gaza, the special relationship itself, trade, of course, still being negotiated, and all of that against a changing geopolitical landscape. So big job for Yvette Cooper, no question. She will get her first big test at UNGA, the United Nations General Assembly, assuming she is representing the United Kingdom when that happens in New York in the coming weeks.
James, I'm fascinated by that nugget that Yvette Cooper used to work for Bill Clinton. I do wonder how that's going to go down with the current White House. Can I just ask, because we know how important the special relationship is, particularly at this time of trade deals and a very precarious international situation around the world. How much of a role does the Foreign Secretary actually have, or is it really about the relationships between the two leaders, Donald Trump and Keir Starmer? What would you say?
I would say it's about both, isn't it? I mean, I think this American presidency is unique in that so much revolves around Donald Trump politically in terms of the decision-making and the direction of travel. So there's no question that the relationship at the top and at the centre is all important. But in terms of the worker bees around that, then huge significant. You know, the legwork that is done at Foreign Secretary level, hugely significant. When Yvette Cooper comes to UNGA, and again, assuming that she is the UK representative, hugely important in terms of working the room, working the back channels, doing the groundwork on matters of huge significance like Gaza, you know, doing the work that is presented to the leaders almost as a fait accompli, hugely important. And to that extent, you know, her skill as a politician and also her skills in terms of personal interaction, that matters big time, not just with the United States, but it's fair to say that her route, her sat-nav to career success is very much rooted through Washington, D.C., Sophie.
Really interesting to talk to you and get your perspective, James. Thank you very much. James Matthews speaking to us there. Well, we're here in Downing Street on a big day, a kind of mega day, really, in Westminster. We had the resignation of Angela Rayner earlier on, and then this box office reshuffle. There's been an awful lot going on. Our chief political correspondent, John Craig, with us now. John,
I think more moves than we were probably expecting at the beginning of the day. When we knew that it was confirmed Angela Rayner was going or gone, we thought, well, perhaps a few moves, but not as big as this. I must admit, I didn't know that Yvette Cooper would work for Bill Clinton either. We're learning a lot today.
We are, love it.
I was going to say, just on the Lammy Vance thing, I mean, deputy prime ministers do get to go abroad from time to time and represent the UK if there's something the prime minister can't go to. I mean, Angela Rayner's been to a few overseas things as deputy prime minister.
So the bromance could continue.
But the but is, of course. But he's also got another job, hasn't he, as Justice Secretary, which is a pretty full-time job, the prisons crisis and so on. He's going to have his work cut out. I mean, also deputy prime ministers have to chair a lot of Whitehall committees, all that sort of stuff. I mean, you know, he's two jobs David, isn't he now? He really is. So we've talked about Shabana Mahmood, a problem solver. I still think it's a bit of a snub in a way. OK, being promoted to Foreign Secretary is good, but it's not a great vote of confidence in Yvette Cooper's record over the past year, is it, in small boats and everything else?
I agree. I think the other thing about this is, I don't know about you, John, but I kind of picked up a certain amount of unhappiness from Yvette Cooper about cuts, right? She was kind of going into battle with the Treasury on behalf of the police. She's obviously been trying to really push through the violence against women drive as well. I just wonder if there was a slight tension there. I don't know.
The other thing that struck me is there was talk earlier in the day of perhaps more changes in the middle and junior ranks as well. And I wonder, there was a rumour earlier in the day there was going to be a bit of a clear out of all the ministers, or some of the ministers at the Home Office. Now, we've got the cabinet now, but is the Prime Minister now going to shuffle middle ministers of state and junior ministers, perhaps bring in some of the younger people, even the 24 intake?
Yeah.
We don't know that yet.
Lots of ambitious Labour MPs, which is a bit of a problem for him always.
Pat Fadden, going down the list, has got his work cut out with welfare cuts. The PM was talking about the other day about going back for more welfare reforms.
And I'm interested on that one as well, so I keep jumping in all the time, because they've married skills with welfare. So it's clearly a bit of a back-to-work drive, isn't it, right? Yes, we're going to cut your benefits, but we're going to skill you up to get a job, right?
And it looks as though Bridget Phillipson has just... I mean, she's had part of her department chopped away from her. Probably just schools now, isn't she? Skills was part... Where does that leave Jackie Smith? I suppose she moves to the new department with... Remember the former Labour Home Secretary, Chief Whip, Minister of State in the Lords now. She presumably will move, to keep the same responsibility, will move to Pat McFadden's... let me get this right. Yeah, is it Pat McFadden? Yeah.
Yeah.
Skills.
Pat McFadden, you're right.
Yeah. Peter Kyle we've talked about. And Douglas Alexander, well, a comeback for one of Gordon Brown's proteges. Jonathan Reynolds, we've said, is odd, and Alan Campbell has proved to be a great survivor. But it's interesting. Let's wait and see. Are we going to get changes to the middle and junior ranks?
It feels it's wide-ranging, doesn't it? John, thank you very much indeed. John Craig there. Our chief political correspondent. Well, an awful lot to talk about on the Labour side, but also, of course, the opposition going to be trying to make hay as well. Joining us now is Henry Hill, the deputy editor of Conservative Home. What do you make of the changes today, Henry?
I think it's always unfortunate in general when you have to have reshuffles this early. They do degrade the efficacy of government. It takes a while for anyone to get to grips with a big, complex department. The best chance you have to do that is when you come in from opposition having held the shadow brief. So in Justice and the Home Office, really critical departments, we're now seeing a change of face, and that's going to set a lot of clocks back to zero. Shabana Mahmood especially, one of the more effective ministers in this government, I think, in terms of cracking on with dealing with issues that were aggravating voters, such as the Sentencing Council. So it will be interesting to see whether or not we lose any momentum on that. David Lammy now in Justice. The sentencing, no, he's Home Office, isn't he? The Sentencing Council review, obviously born from the Lammy review that was commissioned years ago. So difficult to keep focus. Delivering change takes time. Moving senior secretaries of state in critical departments like this is not going to do the government any favours, I don't think.
But you say that, but at the same time, as you say, there is a feeling in Number 10 that Shabana Mahmood has been effective in justice. She came into a nightmare situation, frankly, with prisons overflowing. I think that is beyond capacity. I think that is a fact rather than an opinion, and had to sell to the public releasing prisoners early. She may be the right person cut out to make some of those difficult decisions at the Home Office. That's the thinking, though, right?
I'm sure, absolutely. I mean, essentially, if you've got a very good minister, you always have more possible posts that they could usefully hold than you have able ministers to fill them. The challenge is that maybe she will do a very good job in the Home Office. I don't want to rule that out by any means. But justice isn't fixed. Justice still has an enormous number of problems. The prisons cell crisis is not resolved by any measure. Yes, they've managed to kind of massage some early releases, but they haven't commissioned all the prisons they need. There's still a massive court backlog. It takes years for people to get a date in the High Court, which has all kinds of knock-on effects. And what you really need to deliver change in a department like that is a very good minister who's got to grips with the brief, who is able to pursue that change agenda over multiple years. Starmer seemed to recognise this originally. He was, like many prime ministers, in fairness, before the election, saying that he was going to leave people in post for the long haul. Sadly, something like this comes up. So all of a sudden, you're in a huddle with the Whip's office playing a game of musical chairs. I understand the political motivation for why he's made some of these moves, but I do think that in general, and this isn't specific to this reshuffle, the number of reshuffles we have in British politics does degrade the quality of government.
Can I put it to you that there is an argument that today really reflects the problem that Kemi Badenoch has in cutting through and being noticed? So you've got, for example, Nigel Farage. He's at Reform Conference. He's got defections. He's got sequin suits with, Andrew Jenkins. He's got punchy rhetoric about elections and all that kind of thing. People listen to him. And then you've got Keir Starmer, who even on a difficult day, by virtue of being Prime Minister, has got the levers of government to pull. So that does put you at an advantage just from that perspective. How on earth is Kemi Badenoch supposed to cut through?
It is a real challenge. Obviously, this is a particularly trying end of the week. As you say, you've got a reshuffle, which is always big news, and then you have Reform's party conference. Every party gets one. But it is one of the things that's been a big structural challenge facing Kemi Badenoch from the beginning. Labour has enough MPs now that as and when things started to go wrong, Labour could potentially have a really engaging 2-3-way civil war without anyone else being involved. Then you have Nigel Farage and Reform, who are riding high in the polls. Farage, an excellent campaigner, very adept at drawing the spotlight to himself. So the Conservatives need to work much harder than ever they have in the past in order to cut through and win any kind of space in the national conversation. However bleak it was in 1997, 1998 for William Hague, he was still at least leading this country's second party in what was still then more or less a two-party system.
Really interesting to talk to you and get your perspective, as always, Henry Hill there of Conservative Home. Well, we are here in Downing Street, and I have to say it has been an absolutely blockbuster day that has developed in ways that we weren't anticipating this morning. It all started with the resignation of Angela Rayner, who of course resigned from all of her positions after being found guilty of breaking the ministerial code. That, though, has become the launchpad to an extremely wide-ranging reshuffle. So many people moving around. Is this going to be the reset that Keir Starmer needs to try and prove he's a Prime Minister to deliver on his promises? We'll wait and see.